Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Come on in. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. The Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nathan Ivy, aka Nate the Barbarian, your humble host and moderator. And as usual, I am not alone. Joined today with by Raven Mundy. Raven, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, and Phil Heimlich. How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, I'm fine, but I continue to dispute that description "humble" in your introduction.
And Tarris, how you doing, bro?
Doing wonderful. Doing good. Good to be here.
Now, who you don't see is Kevin Aldridge. That's my road dog and my partner in this endeavor. He is doing other stuff, and he is planning to join us hopefully within an hour. Hopefully, before we leave, we can be graced by the voice of reason. Because without him, I'm just gonna run amok. I'm just gonna run amok. So we need him. We need him. So, bro, Kevin, come back as soon as possible. No, I'm joking. He's working, taking care of stuff, and he's planning on joining us very, very soon. A lot to talk about today. We might even talk about Liberation Day coming up tomorrow. But I want to talk about some city news first. Something happened in the last couple of days that impacts the city of Cincinnati, and that is the city of Cincinnati did not win its bid or proposal to be the host of the Sundance Film Festival. 40 years has been, I believe, it's in Park City, Utah. Now they're moving to Boulder, Colorado, and Cincinnati was not chosen. Mayor Aftab was not happy about it. He's been defending the city of Cincinnati. He said that there was a coastal elitist bias. Like people on the West Coast have a bias about, I guess, the Midwest or Cincinnati. But my question is like, does Cincinnati have the vibe to host something like the Sundance Film Festival, in your opinion? It would have been a real get for the city. A lot of people would have made a lot of money. It would have been great for the city, but we didn't get it. Is it because we're just not sexy enough? We don't have the vibe, or is there a bias about this area? What's your take?
Um, I don't know if I think of sexy when I think of Boulder, Colorado. So I mean, I don't know if I think that Cincinnati is very appealing. I think in the last few years there have been a lot of efforts to make the city, especially the downtown area, a lot more of a tourist attraction. I think that if you want to know anything about how the city can facilitate big events, just look at our summertime calendar. We have a festival damn near every weekend during the summertime, and it's a great time. It brings people from all over the country right here to the city to partake and have fun with us during the summertime. So I don't necessarily know if it's that. I just think that there is kind of, if I take cues from pop culture, there is sort of a little bit of a bias against the Midwest. I think in the Midwest, people don't believe it until they see it. I think that there is this idea that we have to kind of do it on our own by ourselves first before anybody else kind of comes in and thinks that we're capable of doing it. I think, at least from, and I say this from a music standpoint, because when I look at the different music festivals that happen in the Midwest, these all were festivals that were homegrown, that started very locally, that started very small and grew over time. To now, you do have people who come into the city. We still struggle to have big artists come do concerts in the city because they don't always feel confident in our venues. So I think that, like I said, it's just one of them things. When you think of the how big the Sundance Film Festival is, I think that we would have benefited if they would have been able to see us put on our own, sort of homegrown film festivals, kind of get an idea of what that looks like. But they don't have any, they don't have any prior examples of what that could look like here. So unfortunately, we just couldn't. Like I said, they could take a cue from some of our music festivals, but that's a little bit different than a film festival. You kind of have a little bit of a different crowd. So I don't know. I think
Well,
that
well, let
Mayor
me
Aptab could be a little correct that there is a little bit of a bias, but I think that's just what comes with being from the Midwest.
let me add this though. We do have a film. It's called the OTR, the Over the Rhine Film Festival. They've been doing it for years,
See,
and
I'd never even heard of it.
yeah, I mean, it's big among people who are like in that film world.
Mhm.
But I hear what you're saying though. So you're saying a little bit of both, but there might be a bias against the Midwest.
I think in general, just when it comes to entertainment, they love coming to the Midwest to pluck newscasters, because we have such a neutral accent. That's something that I do know. Like, that's something they tell you when you go through media school. You'll do great in news. They love a Midwest accent because it doesn't have any distinct, you know, like, unless you're from somewhere rural, you don't have a real distinct accent. So they pick us to do the news. But when it comes to entertainment, they have a hard time kind of believing that we have that entertainment, spirit or that vibe. And so we kind of have to do it ourselves first to kind of show, hey, we can do this before the big names come and partake.
I think that Cincinnati's just a little premature for, because the Duke Energy Center renovations that I believe that are going on, and just for this particular time for the Sundance Music Film Festival, I just think that I agree with Raven. We have an infrastructure to do it. Look at Blink. We bring hundreds of thousands of millions of people down here to our city, and it's phenomenal for all the economic development or growth, and for not just Cincinnati, for Northern Kentucky as well. It bleeds over. So a Sundance Film Festival being something that large, I couldn't help but believe it would benefit Northern Kentucky as well. So I just think it's just a little bit premature, because if I'm not mistaken, all the work that they're doing down at the Duke Energy Center is because it's to facilitate things like this. And if they had something like the Heritage Bank Center, if they could figure out something down there. And then I know that on the Kentucky side, we're working to be able to, whenever those things, Cincinnati's highlighted, I know on the Northern Kentucky side, we're working hard to be able to say, okay, look at us as well. This is a highlight. Whenever you're looking at Cincinnati, you also get Northern Kentucky as well.
Phil, what's your take?
Well, let me first say I was informed. I want to thank Raven. I did not know that the TV stations kind of looked for a Midwestern voice. I would not be eligible because I'm from New York and I have that Long Island, accent. But to tell you the truth, if I had to choose between a week in Boulder, Colorado, and a week here, I'd take Boulder.
I've never been to Colorado. It looks beautiful in pictures and videos, but I've never been there. And I don't know if I would consider it. But then again, I didn't really know much about where it was originally. Wasn't it originally in Utah?
Park City.
Yeah, so
Park City.
I don't know
I
nothing
haven't been
about
there,
Park
but
City, Utah either. So maybe that's part of it.
it's a
Maybe
pretty cool place.
It's probably more appealing to take it from somewhere like on the West Coast and just move it somewhere closer to the West Coast. It's got similar skiing, lodges. You think of that kind of stuff when I think of Sundance. I think getting on your, like, I kind of think of Dumb and Dumber. Like when they get on they put on their best ski clothes, and you go up there and you put on your best furs and things like that. And I could see Boulder, Colorado having that more of a feel than Cincinnati. But
if they're trying to replicate that, then yeah, I could see it being in Boulder. That makes sense.
Hey, Kevin Aldridge is with. What's up, Kevin? Glad you
What's
made it,
going
bro.
on, everybody?
It felt weird.
Something is definitely been missing for the last 20 minutes or so. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But something was missing.
Enough hot air. Not enough hot
a
air.
Voice of reason was not here.
Not enough common sense. Not enough voice of reason. I appreciate it, bro. It's different, man. I was telling the wife, it's like, Kevin's not gonna be able to do the show. I was like, I don't want to do it without him. I'm just so used to doing it with him. She was like, why? I was like, it's just not right. So I'm glad you're here, bro. But we were talking about, absolutely. We were talking about the fact that the city of Cincinnati didn't get the Sundance Film Festival. And the question I asked, and there could be a lot of questions to put out there, so feel free, anybody, is, does Cincinnati have the vibe to host the Sundance Film Festival? So I was just about to deliver my flow, but I'll let you go right ahead, bro.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati does absolutely have the vibe to host the Sundance. I mean, Cincinnati's got a lot of really great things. I think the problem that Cincinnati suffers from that other cities don't is you don't really have like that one thing in Cincinnati that you can kind of hang your hat on that Cincinnati is kind of known for. Like, we got a bunch of different things here that makes Cincinnati interesting. If you are here, if you're from here and you know the place and you understand the place, you recognize that Cincinnati's not that bad. But we don't have beaches, we don't have monuments or great sites that are going to draw people, to Cincinnati. We have, like, kind of a cool art scene. We've got like cool places to eat. We've got like, nice topography and hills and things of that nature. We've got, major league sports. I mean, we've got stuff here in Cincinnati, but they're, great festivals and events, but they're not like widely known like where you would see these in like other cities and other places. And I think that that's what Cincinnati kind of suffers from, is like, if you really think about it, like, what is Cincinnati really known for? At least in Park City, Utah, it was skiing. You talk about Boulder, Colorado. It's a college town. Again, you've got skiing in close proximity. You've got the mountains. You've got nature out there. I mean, if you just think about what are the things that about other cities that make them draws, I think that's what Cincinnati has really got to work on. Is hey, what are we going to be known for? What are we going to tout here in our city that you can really put out there and help people understand, like a lot of people who live here, about what makes Cincinnati a good destination to host something like that. Because, I mean, Cincinnati's got all of the same stuff that, infrastructure wise, maybe you could say, I'm not sure what the transportation situation is like out in Boulder. I mean, one of the things that I heard that was a negative is, coming from LA, you only got like one direct flight, like into CVG from LAX, whereas if you go into other places, they got a bunch of flights a day. You got one a day coming from there. So you got to work on stuff like that. But, from my vantage point, I think Cincinnati would have been a fine host for Sundance, but you got to really work on the identity thing, because that's what Cincinnati suffers from. I think people just don't have a good sense. People outside of Cincinnati don't really have a good sense of everything that's here.
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody has said stuff that I agree with. And I want to put this up again because the mayor is saying that he believes that there was a coastal elitist, a bias, or people are saying that. And I'm wondering if that's true or not, just in the sense of like, there was a time in my life when I was heavy into films. Like everything that came out of Sundance, I couldn't wait till it came to Cincinnati. I was into the reviews. I was into the avant-garde films, the foreign films, right? And so I always wanted to go to Sundance. And when I thought about it, I don't know, I just pictured mountains in the background and skiing in between watching the films and, walking out into the snow. It just seemed like that was the whole vibe. And I wonder if the people who consistently go to it were looking for that vibe. They didn't want to come to a city like Cincinnati. They were looking to recreate what they had in Park City. And maybe they found that in Boulder, Colorado. And that's what I'm thinking. No, Phil said something that I kind of agree with, actually, which is, I'm a homer. So if Cincinnati's in the fight, I'm always going to go with Cincinnati. But if I have my druthers, I want to go to Boulder. I want to go somewhere with the snow-capped mountains in the background to watch the film festival, because for years and years and years, that's kind of like what I saw. And that was all part of the vibe and the magic of it. And so I think that's what it was. But I'm wondering if there was a bias in terms of like Cincinnati, from what I understand, is way more diverse than Park City and or Boulder, Colorado. I'm wondering if that had an impact, just in terms of like the patrons not wanting to deal with certain elements, right? They're used to what they're used to. Park City was too small. Boulder, Colorado is sexy again. They got Deion Sanders, right? And I think it fits all of these sort of like, it's the milieu that they're looking for, right? It's the right environment. That's what I think. I wouldn't take it too personal. At least we were in the running. I think that says a whole lot.
Well, top three is not a bad position to be in. I mean, I think they started out with 67 cities that they were considering, and Cincinnati was one of the last three that was there. I mean, every time that you lose, it's not necessarily a loss. I mean, just even saying that is something I think Cincinnati can be proud of. I agree with everything you just said, Nathan, and I don't think it's just one thing why Sundance didn't wind up in Cincinnati. I think it's everything that you've said and everything else. I mean, a lot of people in some of their commentary, treat going to this film festival as like a vacation, so, what would what are you going to look to do when you're not, going to see the films, you're trying to chill and relax or whatever. You're looking for everything else that's around it that it has to offer. And I'm not saying that Cincinnati doesn't have that. I mean, we don't have snow-capped mountains, but if skiing is your thing, you got the perfect North Slopes where you can do that as well. Over in Lawrenceburg. I mean, I know it's not the same as the snow-capped mountains of Boulder, Colorado, or Park City, But I mean, there are things to do that you can spend your time with. But that was to my point. Like, you don't have like the beaches or the natural, quote unquote, the natural wonders that a lot of people think about when they go on vacation, or the monuments or the museums. You know, even if you go to DC, you know, it's not like DC's got a lot of that, but they got the history there. You know, you've got you've got you know, the Smithsonian and the White House and all of the different things that you can
For now,
tour.
the Smithsonian.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I
So
think
that's
it's
what I
going to
mean.
end up
Like,
being turned into, I don't know, some kind of a resort. I think the way things are going.
yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, Cincinnati might have to do a better job of trying to pump up what it does have, so that people who are wondering, well, if we go there, what else is there going to be to do? Like, if this is a vacation thing for me, like, why would I want to come to Cincinnati versus going to Boulder or, you know, Florida? And that may always be a losing argument. You may always lose out to the beach and the mountains, and when you're in a Midwest city, that just might not be a winning case, you know, when you're up against places like that obviously have attractive things that you don't have.
Yeah, we need some mountains here. You know, I came across some comments. It was a Facebook post. I'm reading through the comments of an incident that happened in downtown Cincinnati. I played a video for you in just a second. But there were a lot of people in the comments saying, like, this is the reason why, you know, the Sundance Film Festival didn't come to Cincinnati. So let me play this for you and then get your thoughts on the other side. Now, I want to say, warning, if you're with young people or you're in a space, there is some adult language in this. Not a whole lot, but there is some. Want to give you a heads up so you can do what you got to do. Maybe turn the volume down a little bit, put your earpiece in. But I'm going to go ahead and roll tape. Check this out.
Hey, they're going at it. Look at that. Oh, shit. Damn. Hey. They ain't going at it. Hey. Cincinnati on a rap. Damn. Hey, get your leg back. Oh, shit. Hey. Hold on, wait. Hey, she did crack the fuck out of it, though. I ain't gonna lie.
Unmute yourself, Nathan.
Sorry about that. So yeah, you get the gist of it. This happened just within the last week, as I understand it, in downtown Cincinnati. And as I read the comments, a lot of people were like, see, this is why we can't have anything. This is why we don't get a Sundance Film Festival. Are they right? Does this kind of stuff happen everywhere where there's young people? Is this just human beings? Or is this something that we think is particular to Cincinnati?
I think that people think it's particular to Cincinnati because they spend most of their time in Cincinnati. If you go other places with a large number of young people, these things happen. The violence in Chicago don't stop none of the events and the concerts and the festivals that come through that city. We talk about Chirac all the time. You know what I mean? I think that people feel that way because your life is central to the city that you live in. And so if this is what is prevalent in the city that you live in when it comes to the youth, you automatically assume that this is only a signature of the city you live in. That's just not the case. I think that stuff like that is more so what is the product of a bunch of young people who are dealing with a very ununique issue. They are young people in the evening time. Most of them are probably on spring break with nothing to do, with no parental supervision, who are downtown doing the same stuff I did. And I don't say I won't say I was doing that, but doing a lot of the same stuff that I did when I was a teenager, which is hanging out downtown. You make downtown attractive for young people. Young people are going to be down there trying to figure out how to have some fun. They ain't got no money, so they can't partake in the bars and the restaurants that are down there. But all of the nightlife and the attraction is downtown in that area, so that's where they're gonna be at, hanging out, having a good time. At some point, there's gonna have to not have to, but there's probably gonna be a conflict between one or two or a group of young people, and it'll lead to things like that. But to think that it's a Cincinnati problem is just you just haven't been enough places to not know that.
My friend just left here that was before, and we grew up together, and he was a teenager whenever I was like running a mentorship group, and we talked about these specific things about how we had to go retaliate because somebody jumped him, and he's 40 something and I'm 52, and we're talking about these things now. He just came up, he's at Greyfoot Lodge, and he stopped by to visit me, and we were talking about similar situations like this, and we're from Kentucky. And this is when I saw that fight, I was like, oh, that looked like the county fair in Kentucky. You know what I'm saying? Like it's normal teenagers doing normal stuff. I don't agree with it or anything like that. I mean, I was sitting over here, I was shaking my head because I mean, it looked to it looked to me like she snuck her, but when she came back after she snuck her, she was like, she squared up and gave her a chance to fight her straight up. And then as she was doing this, somebody else snuck her. I mean, I don't agree with any of that, but that looks like just teenagers fighting, and I'm sad that it got caught on camera. But if it's not, Cincinnati is not an anomaly. That happens in the country towns and suburbs and Milford. Everywhere you're going to have a girl fight, you can have a boy fight, you can have fighting. They have people out there with the phones watching it. That's just the culture that we live in nowadays. That's a culture that we came in. And if we want to be honest with it, I remember doing the same thing, meeting up at Rose's parking lot and having a fight, West Horton versus East Horton. And we squabble, but it wasn't nothing on camera. So, I mean, it's just teenagers being teenagers, in my opinion.
I agree with everything Raven and Tarris said. And I think it's important to say is that from the looks of the video, you're talking about maybe like one or two girls who were involved in it, and then kids doing what kids do whenever there's a fight. It's like the only difference was we didn't have phones to pull out and record it when I was in high school, but we all gathered around whenever two people would get into it, and you would ooh and you would ah and you would gas the parties up. Like that's the immaturity that comes along with being that age, and engaging in that type of quote unquote childish behavior. But that's what it was. We just didn't have camera phones that, as Tarris said, that captured all of it, you know. So again, that's not condoning it or saying that it definitely looked bad. It's not a great look, you know, anywhere where it happens. I mean, because it's just another one of those things that I think if you are already nervous about, you know, coming downtown, if I'm the Aronoff, I sure as hell ain't happy about it, because you know, most of my audience is probably not that audience. And they are the most of that audience is the exact type of people who see something like that. That's like, well, that's it. That's my season. That's the end of my season tickets for this season. I'm not coming down there for that. So I'm probably saying that if I'm with the Aronoff right now, I'm probably not too happy about, you know, that thing going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're asking for some extra patrols or some extra attention down in and around there to make their customer base feel a little bit more safe in the aftermath of that.
How about you, Phil? What's your take on it? Is this just kids being kids?
No, I don't think so. I just thought it was real ugly, the whole scene, and caused me to wonder about a couple things. First of all, where are the police? That's one thing. I mean, that's a pretty busy kind of highly visible area with restaurants and Aronoff and stuff. And I was disturbed there was no cop there. It also disturbed me that no, it didn't look like anybody tried to break it up, try to grab them, break it up. They just kind of sat there like it was entertainment or something. And I mean, I can tell you, I know a number of people that have been attacked downtown Cincinnati and seriously, seriously hurt, injured. Uh, I think I remember a story. I think Joe Dieter's son. This was years ago, but it was a taste of Cincinnati. Some people just jumped him and put him in the hospital. I can tell you this. I also believe there's a role for parents. I would, when my kids were in high school, if they said to me, "Hey, I'm just going to go. I'm going out. Where are you going?" "Well, I'm just going to hang out downtown." I'd say, "No way, no way, you're doing that." And that's just how I was, as a parent. But
What would be your reservation? Is it because you're afraid they might get into something or get hurt or?
because it's being downtown. First of all, I think as a general rule, it can be a dangerous place. Okay, I really do. And I mean, I like the Aronoff and go out to eat there, but yeah, I think it is. I think it is dangerous downtown. And maybe it's part of it because when I was a prosecutor, maybe because I had a lot of cases. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think it is dangerous for kids to be. It's one thing that, okay, we've got tickets to a game or something. Okay, that's fine. But to just say, "Oh, I'm just going to hang out on the streets," to me, that's asking for trouble.
Yeah. I don't know if the police were involved. I mean, I just had that maybe 90-second video. Maybe they were involved and came in and sort of pushed people along, go home, that kind of thing. There were no shots involved because that would have made the news. So, I agree with everybody what they said so far. I remember being those teenagers. There was nowhere else, no place else to go. I used to go downtown. That's where the girls were. That's where my partners were. That's where we wanted to hang out. So plenty of fights.
it
Seen
it just
them.
made the most sense because the bus square was right there. Everybody from every neighborhood could gather right there on the square because all our
Right.
buses met up at the square. Even during the school year, I remember that was like the best part about when it got like hot outside. You hopped on the bus. You went to the square. Y'all kicked it for a couple hours before your parents got home, and then you made it home in time enough to beat your parents there and to be sitting at the table doing your homework when they walked in the door. It just was it's part of living in an urban city. That's just the experience. You don't have money to go and be places. 9 times out of 10, you come from the kind of household that probably can't afford quote unquote proper childcare, but I'm old enough to kind of look after myself. So yeah, me and my friends gonna go to the square. We're gonna kick it for a couple hours and then we're gonna go home and do what we do at home. I don't think that there's anything inherently bad about a bunch of kids who live in a city, who live in an urban area, hanging out in the city. I don't because you wouldn't say that about a bunch of rural kids who are kicking or who get together after school and go kick it at so and so's on so and so's farm or and remember a couple years ago, these kids were from rural cities throwing these barn parties and all that stuff. Like it's a thing where you have young people, they are going to have the desire to get together and kick it and hang out, and sometimes that comes with conflict because not everybody's going to get along. So the idea that it's just unsafe or that it's inherently not okay or unsafe for city kids to be kicking it in the city, I can't agree with that, Phil.
Yeah, I think what's kind of an interesting conversation. And again, I don't want to make it seem like it's a new thing, right? Because I agree with Raven. I think anytime you get a large number of young people, and especially with social media and a lot of the trash talking and things that go on social media now, like a lot of times that's where it gets set off, where kids know they're going to be a whole bunch of kids and maybe that person you looking for is going to be there too. That's where a lot of things get set off, because I went to a couple of festivals last year just around the city, different parts of the city, and on both occasions where there were a lot of kids there was an altercation. There was an incident that jumped off where there was a fight there. And so again, I don't want to overstate that. I'm just talking about the experience that I had, in being out and about where there was a bunch of kids. There were some things that popped off. And I think there's probably a larger conversation about, if you want to have that conversation, like how can we be talking to our kids, mentoring our kids, dealing with them to help them understand that in those types of bigger social circles, how do you resolve conflict? How do you handle things in a better way? You know, maybe those are more of the conversations that we need to be having rather than just saying, oh, these kids are bad. And again, I always try to look at things in context. It wasn't everybody that was there that was fighting. Like, this wasn't a huge street brawl where you had 25, 30 kids who were all fighting. You had 2 or 3 girls and everybody crowding around it to watch it, which made it seem like a bigger spectacle maybe than it was. And so I think, you know, to lump all of those kids who were there into it and just said, oh, they were all fighting. Well, that's not necessarily what, you know, what the video showed there. And we know in any situation, all it takes is one or two people to get it cracking. And that's all it takes. You don't need 25 or 30 to have a bad situation. You just need, you know, 1 or 2 that's off the chain. And I think that's what we saw there. Again, not minimizing it, but some of that I think is just kind of inherent with, unfortunately, when you get a lot of kids around together.
Is it fair to say that in some scenarios, not all, but in some scenarios, right? Because the Bible says, and I'm no Bible scholar, this will be the one and only time. No, I'll do it again at some point when it fits the argument. But
I always thought of you as a veritable Billy Graham.
But the Bible says there's a time for all things. Is there a time for violence? Is there a time for fisticuffs? Is there a time to put your paws on somebody? Because I'm gonna say there is.
Sure.
I would agree.
Sure.
And I think that when we talk about a lot of the conflict that we do see in the city, I don't know if anybody else is paying attention to this, but when we see a lot of the gunplay that happens in the city, the very first thing that I hear people say is they need to put these guns down and pick up some boxing gloves. Or they need to put these guns down and go back to doing it how we used to do it back in the day. I hear that from my elders all the time. Back in the day, we used to throw hands. My hands was ready to eat for everybody. Like, that's what, you know, a lot of the older generations say when it comes to resolving conflict. So if that's what the desire is when we are having conversations about these young people using weapons and guns and stuff, then you can't be all that upset when you see stuff like this, where it's like Kevin said, 2 or 3 girls, they are in conflict, and instead of them pulling out a knife or a gun or some other kind of weapon, they handled it the way that it was handled back in the day. They got it out, and then they went on about their business. It was a 90-second video. We saw them 3 girls. They might have been scrapping for all of 2 minutes, and then they went about their business. That's kind of what that is. It's a time and a place, and it might not feel ideal for the people. Like I said, it might not be ideal to Aaron off because they don't want that to affect their business. It might not be ideal to the businesses around, but they got their one off, and everybody went home and was alive at the end of the day. I think that if you give the chance for something, that kind of a conflict, to be handled in that way, it's going to be handled in that way, and then people are going to move on. Now, if we, like Kevin said, want to deal with teaching our kids a better way of conflict resolution that doesn't include violence, then sure, let's have that conversation. But it's what we prefer, is it not? We prefer for our kids to not pick up a weapon and just handle it in a way that makes the most sense, which is in that moment, let's get these couple of hands off and then we can all go home to our mom and our daddy.
And if you think about it, again, I'm not, you know, trying to minimize this in any way, but if you look, if you want to critique the fight, so to speak, it wasn't really that. It was one girl that kind of came in, Superman punched the one, kind of came back and got a second helping maybe a few minutes later. It seemed like the other girl wasn't even really, like, the one that got hit seemed like she wasn't even really trying to deal with the smoke. So as far as like the definition of a fight, I don't think that's exactly what maybe an assault might be a more adequate definition of what that was. But yeah, I mean, just on your question, Nathan, I think there's a continuum, right? I think there's a continuum of where of what you go through in terms of when do you get to the point where it's time to become physical with somebody. And I think like that is what when we talk about conflict resolution, what we can be teaching our young people is that, you know, my first reaction to you saying something to me that I disagree with should not be to pop you in the mouth, right? Like there should be
what you say.
Well,
Depends on what
Okay,
you say. Because
yeah,
it's some people you say the wrong thing to them, and there's no words. They going straight in your mouth. But hold on, Kevin. We got Babe Truth with us. Hey, Babe, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, man. You are first caller, man. Welcome to Hot Mic, bro.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to listen. Good to
Absolutely.
see.
So what's on your mind?
Um, I think you guys are burying the lead.
Okay.
I think the real problem is why the hell are our girls so damn aggressive and violent and uncouth anymore? Girls are quick to square up and fight. Throw their hood on and fight faster than dudes are now anymore. Why are our female children like this anymore? That's the issue.
I vehemently disagree with that
Me
sentiment.
too.
I don't think that girls are more aggressive than boys at all. I think that again, we are just watching. I mean, I guess this is anecdotal, but I think that we just live in a generation where there are cameras out capturing everything. I think that boys in the past have been more prone to boasting about the fisticuffs that they've gotten into back in the day. But I feel like girls have always kind of been able to throw hands. I come from a family of women who I got stories that go back generations before I was born of the women in my family kicking ass because they didn't have a choice but to. I don't
That
think that
sounds
it's
like
a
case in
matter
point.
of I don't think that it's a matter of girls being more aggressive. I just think that we are now living in a time where we are privy to girls having to or feeling the need to defend themselves physically because of social media. You wouldn't see this stuff 20, maybe 30 years ago because there was no social media to capture these things. But girls were fighting in.
I might have seen one female fight in my life before social media, before Twitter, before Facebook. You guys have been on what, 6 months now, Mr. Ivy?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You've been on for 6 months. The first time you talk about youth discretion is a woman fight. I think that speaks volumes. That speaks that's the coup de grace right there. That it's women. The first time you talk about youth discretion in a place like Cincinnati that has it regularly, you're talking about females.
I grew up
So
with three sisters, man, and they fought. I've seen my older sisters throw hands, and all my, that's just the way of life. I mean,
hold on, Terrence.
Nathan, I just
Terrence,
texted you a
your
video.
sisters are biracial?
no, I got blackety black cotton picker,
Okay.
Alabama
Okay.
cotton
I'm
picker
sorry. I'm
black
sorry.
sisters.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That don't
Okay.
mean nothing. That don't mean
Hey,
nothing. But I
Nathan, I
just grew
just
up with
texted you a
sisters. I
video.
grew
Are
up with
you able to
sisters
show it?
who threw hands, and I grew up with going to church, watching girls in my church choir throwing hands. I go up and going to middle school, going to the playground, and watching girls throw hands. I grew up. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
part of life,
I was
man.
just thinking, and growing up in Hardin County, that they probably had a lot of racial strife and was down there fighting because of that. I thought that might.
Hardin
I just
County
thought
is
that.
the least racist. Hardin County is the least racist place in the country, probably. In my opinion, I always say they need to do case studies on Hardin County because of the lack of racism there.
Okay, yeah. When I was coaching a middle school football team down there and got called an N-word by the parents of North Hardin, but it's okay.
I got called an N-word by some people too, but that
Yeah,
didn't
exactly.
stop me. That didn't
Right.
stop
No,
me.
I didn't say that racism would stop you, but what you were saying about it being the least racist place in America, I just had to beg to differ, but because of my own experience. But I'm sorry.
Hey Nathan, I agree. I will say this. I agree with Raven, but when Babe Truth said what he first said, I have to admit that what he said was sort of like my first reaction was like, man, it just seems like this is the case. But then I thought about it. I stopped and I thought about it, and I landed on where Raven was at. I think so many things that we feel are more pervasive today than before is because of the impact of social media and cameras and phones being everywhere. It's just like when you used to couldn't get white people to believe that black people got assaulted by the police, and then police started wearing body cams, and now it's all of a sudden like, oh man, police is beating up black people like hotcakes. No, that's always been happening. We just didn't have the video evidence to prove to you that it was actually happening. Nobody believed this until it started being on camera. So that was where I slowed down, because I was where Babe Truth was when I saw that video, and I was like, man. And then I recognized that I was being a I was being a slave to the moment and the current times that we're in. And I even reflected back on my own youth growing up. And you're right. I mean, girls used to fight in my high school, all the
Girls used to
time.
fight in high school, yes, but Kevin, I'm sure you live in a very outstanding neighborhood and probably don't see this very much. But in the city, I have never seen more lace fronts than
He lives in a gated community.
exactly. Pride to Weatherington. I've never seen. I'm the same age
Exactly
as you
right.
guys, even older than the woman there. But I've never seen so many.
What about me?
Oh no, Hank Jr., I'm not nowhere near your age. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks a lot, babe. That really makes me
walked
feel
right into
great.
that one,
Thanks
Phil.
a lot.
but I've never seen no.
You
Sexy
should have
Hank.
more
I do.
compassion.
All the
though.
compassion is for your dad. He's the historical Heimlich. You're just a city
Thank you.
rumbler.
Thank
But
you.
listen, all the,
Yeah. You know what they say? Genius skips generations.
it skips too. It skips too. Don't forget that. But listen, I've never seen more lace fronts, weaves, extensions laying in the street from girls fighting than I do now than I did 20, 30 years ago. So you're not gonna sit here and tell me that women wasn't wearing weaves and extensions in the streets back then. They do it
I
now,
don't
and that's why you seeing all
I
this
don't
stuff
know
in the
what
streets.
city
Literally,
I don't know what city you lived in that you've never seen a tumbleweave. That's
no,
the coin
no,
term now. They're
no.
called tumbleweave.
Cincinnati
Remember
girls
being
are
a
very
little
demure.
kid. I grew up in Mount Auburn in the Clifton area. I remember seeing a many a tumbleweave in my day as a little kid playing outside. That's when my generation is a generation that still played outside. When we had computers and cell phones, but we still played outside. I remember seeing plenty of tumbleweaves. So we're not gonna act like this is a new thing. Women have always been able to
Nobody
throw
said it was
hands
new.
when need
No,
be. That's
ma'am.
always been a thing.
Nobody
Social
said it
media
was
makes you
new.
feel like women are more aggressive or women are more openly violent. That's just not a thing.
Then explain the proliferation of um all these women just knuckling up. There's several fights on Twitter. There's several pages on Twitter where you can go, and it is nothing but is deluged with nothing but girl fights. I'm like, damn, girl fights are so hard
Babe
to watch
Truth,
because
are you
they're so
familiar?
usually
Are you
unbalanced.
are you familiar with the website called World Star Hip Hop?
That's what I was about to say. World Star. All the, at the end of that video, they had all the
Kevin,
girls that
I
understand.
win.
my
That's
generation
that's the
was
generational
in
gap. I stopped watching that 20 years ago, Raven.
my generation. Okay, cool, because we a little bit different in age. My generation grew up on World Star Hip Hop. It was a point where
Exactly. Case in point. Stop right there.
there was a point where it was a normal routine. Soon as I get out of school, I'm sitting on the bus. I'm riding the bus home. Everybody is sitting in a bus seat on World Star Hip Hop, watching the fight compilations. Those
Exactly.
fight compilations
Exactly.
did not miss out on boy fights, girl fights, boy
No.
girl fights,
No.
grown fights, old people fighting, young people fighting. Like it's
Well, every now and then, ev-
you are seated in an opinion. I feel like personally, just from this conversation, I believe you're seated in an opinion on black women. You are subscribing to a narrative
what the
about
hell? Who
black
said anything about
women.
black women? Who said
I
anything about black women? How the hell did you
I'm
pull that out of yourself? Come on now.
Well, when you make
Nobody said
comments
nothing about
about
black women.
weaves and lace
Stop. No,
fronts and
no, let
stuff
me
like
finish.
that, it has
Let
an
me finish.
implication to it because you're not talking about white women when you say that.
How do you
When
know
you
that?
start
How
when
do
you
you know
start
that?
having
Then he asked
conversations
about my sisters. He asked if my
I'm in
sisters
Groesbeck.
were
There's
black
plenty
say
of
enough.
white
stuff
women
like
wearing
weaves
weave.
and lace fronts,
I'm in Groesbeck.
that is implying
No,
that
no,
you're
it's
talking
not. See,
about black women, babe. True,
absolutely,
and so I have to
absolutely
be
not.
honest with you and say that within this conversation, it just seems like you have a bias against black women.
Absolutely not. I'm sitting here in Groesbeck. Just saw a young lady at the damn, a little white lady with blonde weave at the damn UDF right up the street. So not sure what you're talking about there, but there's a. Hold
What
on, let
is
me
that
finish. Let me
evidence
What
finish.
does that
of?
have to do with
Let
anything
me
that we're
say this.
talking
Let me
about?
say this. Let me say this.
Okay.
I can't talk over 4 or 5 people. Let me say this, please. When you
Hey,
mentioned
babe, I
when you
do it all the
mentioned World
time.
Star Hip Hop, that's how he got famous. That's how the dude got famous before he died. Showing fight videos, fight videos of the youth.
He asked
Ain't
about
he?
my sisters.
Huh?
I said when you asked about my sister, she's on to something because when you asked about my sisters, but at the end of that video,
Because
when
you
Nathan
asked him if
showed it,
his sisters were
yeah,
biracial, and he
Yeah,
said
because if
no,
they're
and
at
so
the
you're
end of
biracial,
the
they're
shocked.
at
probably
the
in
end of
Kentucky
at the
getting
end of
called
the
N
video,
words all day.
at the
That's
end
what I
of
was
the
getting
video,
at.
if you watch at
That's
the
what
end
I
of the
was
video that
getting at.
Nathan
I lived
showed,
in Horton, Kentucky, where he's from.
and
Where
you
he's
and you
from.
misquote. Hold on, babe. Truth, and you misquote. If you lived in North Hardin, Kentucky, that's the most blackest part of Hardin County. So if you got called the N word in North Hardin County,
North
where
Hardin,
it's
South. It was
70%
Hardin
black
County.
in North Hardin County, then you deserved it, in my
Only
opinion. So
Kentucky.
Hey,
Only
babe,
Kentucky.
at the end
I
of
Only
at the
appreciate
end
you,
only
of
bro.
Kentucky. Thank you, thank you. Only Kentucky would try to differentiate between South and North of a county. I was in Hardin County. That's
Hey,
all I
babe,
know.
with that, bro, I appreciate you, Carl. I'm gonna let you go so we can move on.
All right,
Appreciate
bro.
you, man.
Nathan, at the end of that video that you showed, at the end of the video, if you've seen, all the girls they were running behind them with the cell phones. So that backs up with we were all saying about access to social media. At the very end of the video, everybody's running behind, and I was thinking to myself, world star. So I mean, you guys are right. It's about access to putting that stuff out, but these things have been happening since the days have been happening.
Yeah, I
So
agree
Well,
with Raven on this. I
and
mean, girls have been rumbling for years. This ain't no new phenomenon. The only thing that's new is now we got cell phones. I thought that
yeah,
Kevin made an excellent point about how white people used to tell us, like, why are you complaining about police brutality? It never happens until we see with the proliferation of cell phones that it happens way more frequently than we were comfortable believing.
yeah. Here's one thing I might say that might be true is that the fact that everything is now out on social media and that there are these viral moment videos and there's so much more of this to consume now that it is possible that because it's out there so much and it's in front of young people so much that they're conditioning that they're being conditioned now to think of this as, hey, this is just what I do, or this is where I'm gonna get my viral moment. Or I mean, there might be, I'm not saying that that's entirely at play, but I think that might be a little bit of a component to it. Not saying that they're going out and getting into fights specifically to create a viral moment or to get on video, but I think it's just like with anything. If you are inundated with images and you see things enough, eventually that can kind of impact how you think about stuff and how you go about it. Like if you see people just throwing hands, when somebody pop off and you see enough videos like that on young impressionable minds, they can start to think like, hey, this is how we do it.
Yeah, it's
I do.
possible, but I
I
disagree.
I I do and don't disagree, Kevin. I do disagree that I think that I disagree in the way that I think that it is making it a lot harder for parents to teach their kids better ways to resolve conflict. I think that as a parent, you do your best, right? To teach your kids the right ways to do things. But when you're not looking or when you're not paying attention, they're also being influenced outside of the things that you teach
Yes.
them. And I think that I just have to be real. I have women my age and who I know are parents, who are mothers, who love the kind of programming. I have a personal vendetta against the entertainment the production company Zeus. It's relatively new in the last couple of years. It's a production company called Zeus. Their entire list of programming is nothing but reality TV, but it's not even like what we know what used to be reality
Right.
TV. It is
Ratchet.
simply just it's trash TV. It is a bunch of women who sign up to be violent and aggressive on TV for money. That is all of their programming. Now they lately they tried to step into the dating game reality TV, but even that produces violent programming. Teenage girls, but also grown ass women love it for whatever reason. They love it. They can quote it. All of their favorite, celebrities are not even real celebrities anymore. They are simply just women who have signed up to be on these trash reality TV shows who all they do for an hour straight is fight and cuss at each other and bicker and call each other out their name and put hands on each other. When you are trying to teach your teenage boy or girl, because at all, because the boys get it on their end too. Whatever programming that they're watching, some of them are watching Zeus as well, but they're also listening to the music, which is also an issue. But when you are trying to be a parent and teach your kid, hey, this is the proper way to resolve conflict. And then after that conversation, they go to their room and they turn on their laptop or they get on their phone or their tablet and they're watching a bunch of grown folks beat the hell out of each other. It's kind of hard to truly, you have to work a little bit harder as a parent to teach them that in moments that are conflictual moments, in moments where you disagree with somebody, or in moments where you feel disrespected, instead of relying on your favorite TV show and what that's influencing you to do, listen to me, your parent, and use these tactics or these coping mechanisms for when you get into these situations. So I won't say that the shows entirely are the issue, but I do think that it gives your child options,
Yeah.
right? It gives your
So
child the
I
option to either
I
listen to
think
what my mom and dad said,
can I admit
or
something?
I
I,
want to do
I
what my
think
favorite
great.
daddy did, or I want to
Hey,
do what
Kevin,
my favorite.
can I admit something? This rarely
Yeah.
happens on this show, but I've been moved. I hear your guys' point. I think there is some to a certain. It's just like the worst elements of hip hop, right? Like if you are raised in a household with the kind of values and reinforcements, you can resist the
Yes.
negative stuff that's in the music. And I hear the point you guys are making. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I can see that. So yeah, if you're in a household where you don't have what you need to resist what's out there, yeah, it will influence you. It'll make you feel like, oh, she said my name. It's time to pop off. I can see that. Not
Yeah.
everyone's going to fall victim to that, but some could. Yes.
Yeah, and think about it. Think about it like from what Raven said. She said older women, and young women alike watch it. But just think about the level of mental maturity that you have when you're older that you don't have when you are younger to be able to delineate from that. Like I can watch trash TV all day, but that's not going to make me. I can go out and watch it for the quote unquote entertainment value, and I'm not going to go out and try to emulate that, right? Because I'm a grown man who's got sense enough to know that I'm too. Oh, look, bruh. I'm not out there trying to fight you. Now, if you back me into a corner, you come after mine. I got to defend myself. Then I'm gonna do what I got to do. But I'm not going out. Look, I'm too old to be fighting, man. I'm not trying to be out there wrestling with these young cats or nobody or old cats out in the street. I'm just too old for that. That's my mentality. But if I was 15, 16, I didn't have the same mindset that I have today. And I might have been a little bit more susceptible to that type of messaging because I just didn't have the maturity. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the the fear of injury now. When you're young, you get over injuries quick. You can maybe take a 2-piece and be all right in the next day. Hey, bro, if I take a 2-piece now, man, I'm on the IR for a couple of months, bro.
Right.
That's just what it is.
Hey, Kevin, there's nothing like sciatica to take the fight out of you. That's nothing like it. You make you think rethink your whole priority. So good conversation. And thanks to Babe Truth. If you want to join the conversation, there is a link that is featured in both YouTube and on Facebook in the comment section. Just click on it, and when you're backstage, I'll send you a message. Let's move on. This next question, I got to
Can I
absolutely
just
go right
say
ahead.
one thing? Yeah, I sent you a video. I don't know if you can show it or not, but one thing I feel good about as a dad is I kind of required my kids either through bribery or just plain insisting that they take more, self-defense lessons. They've been for, I don't know, the last 10 years or something, because, as a dad, I wanted to protect them. And the video I sent you is just a little clip of my daughter doing her little kickboxing thing. But I just felt, all I can say is what we've all talked about here is the fact that kids fight. I mean, and they always have. Maybe it's worse now, maybe it's not. I don't know. But I just felt good as a dad that, I did everything I could to prepare my kids just to protect themselves.
I did get the video, and
I will say the one girl in the
I'm not able
video,
to
she
show it at
might
the
need
moment.
some. I think the one girl in the video, she might need some self-defense classes because she got snuck too many times to my comfort. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I'm okay with a
She
fair
was the
fight,
first
but at
one.
some point, she was like clearly didn't want to fight anymore, and they were just bullying
Right.
her and picking on her. They're just running in, doing Superman stuff, and the fight bothered me less than the commentary. I'm like, y'all sound like grown people. You sit here giving commentary to a fight with children, and you're not gonna help. I mean, it's just disgusting. That's part of the problem with the streets these days. Grown people acting like children. You're not a child, sir. You're not a child, ma'am. You're supposed to be unk. You're supposed to be auntie. Act like that. Act like that. We got too many in the drug game did this. We got too many grown folks in the streets and been this way for years acting like children. You are not a child, sir. You are not a child, ma'am. Act your age. Act your
Yeah.
age.
And I think Phil kind of made that point, in his commentary, just about the disappointment that there were none of the adults who were around who, tried to intervene. And I get it. I mean, I guess there are people nowadays who like, hey, I ain't trying to catch a stray. These ain't my kids. I mean, that's different in many ways than a lot of environments that we grew up in. I mean, I know anytime that there was a fight and adults were around, they were going to break it. They were going to break it up. Somebody was going to get involved in some way, shape, or form and try to
That was the whole point
separate.
why you did it in secret, because you knew if you did it around some grown-ups, they was gonna break it
Right.
up.
Yeah, but
The one thing
that
nobody brought
clearly is
up,
not
though,
the case these days.
the one thing nobody brought up, I thought you might, is the fact you had so many people running with their phones.
That's what I
World
was saying.
star,
That's what I was saying at the
world
end.
star. Everybody wants to catch something on video and post it on their social media and try to get a lot of likes. I'm like, wait a
Absolutely.
minute.
That's what it is, man.
Nathan, you talked
That's what I
about
meant about the viral moments, man. That's
you,
what
you t-
everybody is. That's what everybody is looking for, to capture that thing that's gonna go viral. That's gonna get them likes, subscribers, or whatever. I mean, this is the age that we live in now, and I don't know that it's gonna get any better or
Oh, it
change
doesn't.
anytime soon.
It gets worse. You gonna say something, Phil?
Yeah, I mentioned, I think before in this show, a book by the pastor at Crossroads, Brian Tome, called Five Marks of a Man. And I'm relating to your comment, Nathan, about adults acting like children. And in fact, my son, who's 21, and I are going through the devotional that goes with that book. And it's really, again, if you have sons, any of you, Five Marks of a Man, I strongly recommend it. But one of the comments, I may have said this before, one of the comments he says in introducing this book is, he says, I've known 15-year-old men and 65-year-old boys. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. If you look, no, I'm getting political. If you look at the guy in the White House, that's an example of a 77-year-old
Absolutely.
boy.
Great point. Let me move on. I got another video for you. And we listen and we don't judge. We listen and we don't judge. I want to add that caveat because I want you to be as honest as possible for the sake of the conversation. And this is a video of an influencer named Dr. Umar Johnson, who coincidentally was here recently, and Raven shared a stage with him. He's real big in some circles, other circles you may not know you may not know who he is, but apparently his daughter is in a same-sex relationship, and the thought of what he would do if she decides to marry a woman came up, and he posted a video. Check this out and then give me your thoughts.
Nathan, could you give us just a little more explanation of who he is?
He
and
is a
kind of that
big
kind of
African
thing?
American. He's an influencer. Primarily talks.
I mean, I saw it. I'm just curious, is he like
He's
a
not a pastor.
pastor? Is he a
He's a
teacher? Is he
doctor
an
of
athlete?
childhood development or something like that. Something to do with children. I don't know the whole background of his whole academic background, but he is a big influencer in some circles. Not as big as he was a few years ago, but he's still pretty popular. Again, to the point where he was just here in Cincinnati within the last month. And Raven was at the event. I think she shared the stage with him and asked him questions and things like that. So he travels around the globe talking about a lot of different issues, not just Black issues, but, child development, Black kids in public schools and, how to deal with the system and things like that. And he gives his thoughts on his commentary on politics and what's happening all the time. So check this out and give me your thoughts.
When I get married, will you walk me down the aisle? When I get married, will you walk me down the aisle? Baby Smurf, if you are marrying a man that I approve of, I will walk you down the aisle if you would like. If you marry a man, I understand that you have been drafted into the Rainbow Army. I don't agree with that at all. but I love you as my child. It will not affect our relationship, but do not ever ask me to co-sign or support something that I am vehemently against. I will not walk you down the aisle if you're marrying a woman. Let me say that one more time. I will not walk you down the aisle if you're marrying a woman, nor will your wife be allowed in my house. You will be allowed in my house. Your wife will not, because I do not support that lifestyle. I love all African people. I love you as my child. I love all African people. I love you as my child, but I will not co-sign that. Mama Smurf, I can't believe you let our daughter get caught up in that nonsense. Mama Smurf, I cannot believe you allowed our daughter to get caught up in this nonsense. You should have gave me my baby. I'm talking to Mama Smurf. When you knew you ran out of energy raising our child, when you knew you didn't want to raise her anymore because I wasn't going to marry you, you should have gave.
So that's Dr. Umar Johnson. He says, listen, if you're in a same-sex relationship, same-sex marriage, I ain't walking you down the aisle, and your significant other is not welcome in my home, which raises the question on a lot of levels. I mean, it's a parent question, like, what is the role of a parent of an adult child? Or like, how do you show love? What do you think about what he had to say? Do you agree or disagree?
Well, first, let me just say, Raven needs a doctor in front of her name. I think that would look real good, Dr. Raven Mundy. So we gotta work on getting you your doctorate, Raven, because that would.
I when you started saying, I thought you're saying she needs to meet a
No,
doctor. I
she
didn't
needs to get
quite
the
get that, but
credentials.
okay.
So
Hey,
that
listen,
she
I
can
wouldn't
Maybe
mind
she
meeting the
does or
doctor
wants
either
to,
if
but
he
I'm just.
cute.
I would.
There you go, Raven. There you go.
I could see that.
Because
Yeah.
I think Raven got better flows than Dr. Umar
Yeah.
Johnson. The first thing I thought when I watched that, I'm like, bro, why you putting your family business out there for public consumption? First of all, which is kind of what makes it laughable to me. It's like, why does the nation need to understand what your relationship is with your daughter and what you agree or disagree with? Like, why is that even for public consumption first and foremost, which makes me skeptical about it, and that you're doing it partially for show, that it has nothing to do really with your love and your relationship with your daughter, but it's more for what you're doing for your sphere or whatever that you're putting out there. Now, I would say, look, whatever someone's individual beliefs are, what their convictions are, I can't knock that. Okay. Like if that's what you believe, like if you don't, for religious reasons or whatever, you don't believe in that, and that's not something that you feel like by being there that you can condone or whatever. I get that people fall along those lines all the time of saying, hey, I love you, but I can't co-sign what you're doing. And that's clearly what he was saying there. I mean, I think we all like to think that as parents, you will want to be supportive of your children and support them in whatever decisions that they make. But what do you say to somebody when your child is heading down a path that you sort of vehemently disagree with? We happen to be talking about, same-sex marriage in this case, but you could put it on any number of topics that a parent might disagree with, a lifestyle, behavior, or an action that their kid is going to take, and they're not going to condone it. So I think the first thing would be like, oh yeah, how could he? I jump down his throat because he's not supporting, his daughter. I think you kind of got to pump the brakes on that and ask yourself, like, there are a lot of things that, kids will do that parents don't co-sign, and they won't get behind. I mean, when I was growing up, my mother was one who did not believe in interracial relationships, and she made that very clean. She made that very plain and clear, that not that you couldn't do it, but you wasn't gonna bring it into her house. Like, if that's what you're gonna do, understand that you're not gonna do it here.
Right.
And primarily,
You can. She was okay with you having white friends, though.
Well, my mother's.
Okay.
Let me further put some context around it. The reason why she held that was because if we were not allowed to go over to their house, so if we were dating a white girl and we couldn't go over to the white girl's house because her parents were racist and wouldn't allow us in the house, my mother was like, you're not going to bring that here. So that was primarily her rule of thumb. If you can't go there, they're not going to come here. And she meant that. You know what I'm saying? She meant that. Now I have two brothers who, you know, have both married, who are both married interracially. And my mom went to and was in both of their weddings. So even if she might not have agreed with it philosophically, she still wanted to be there to support their sons and never treated any of their wives any differently, so long as, you know, there wasn't no issues on the other side. So I think parents, you know, draw the lines in all types of places. I would just rather the brother had just kept it in-house, man. The world don't need to know what's going on with you and your daughter. And I thought the little slight that he tried to throw out there about the rainbow team and all that type of stuff, man, you know, it's just, to me, that's just like a little bit uncalled for. I was a little bit turned off by the fact that he was even putting his business out there like that.
He doing it for the gram and his followers. I mean, to me, he doesn't love his daughter. You don't really love her like that. And maybe it's because, you know, he was out of the home. But I mean, this is absolutely reprehensible. I mean, this guy is virtue signaling using a real life situation with his own daughter. Who you doing this for? These people in the gram don't care about you. You're doing this for likes. You think people are gonna think you down for the cause now because you more pro-black or you more pro-heterosexual? It's absolutely ridiculous, man.
His daughter did. His daughter came at him first. If she came at him first, and then I think she went on the Tommy Sotomayor show, and Tommy Sotomayor he lit Tommy Sotomayor lit her up. I mean, lit her up. But whenever we're dealing with people, I, as a rule of thumb on anything, I'm like, look at their fruit. Look at their fruit. Dr. Umar, he can talk all what he's talking about, but I'm like, look at your fruit, sir. You know, you can't tell me about love. You know, you can't tell me that you can't date outside your race when whenever you're not producing anything with all he's doing is talking and trying to make people feel. I don't know what he's trying to do, and people who listen to him, I don't understand it. And I would like with people like Dr. Umar. I mean, I would challenge to his intellect, and my end of my conversation would be like to him, look at your fruit. Like if you're telling black women, black men, and call black men bunny chasers or bunny hoppers or anything, any kind of disparaging words for black men who date outside their race, but then he's dating inside his race and he's producing foul fruit. He got nothing to say. I mean, what can you say? What are you putting to society? You're not even bringing anything to society except talking points to people who are lost even more. If somebody listens to Dr. Umar about anything, I would challenge them on their mental capacity to comprehend life outside of anything. I grew up around black and white and Korean and an army of people who did not see. I'm so blessed for that. So blessed for that. My first wife and my three boys' sons' mom is married. She's interracial, black dad, German mom. So my kids are biracial. And with Dr. Umar's thinking, it is damaging to people who might even think, oh yeah, I'm not going to date outside my race, or I'm going to put. I just don't even understand. Can't even comprehend. And then we're going to jump on the LGBTQ thing, and he's talking about, you're not welcome in my house. I'd be like, who cares, man? I would even question, what kind of house do you have? Where's your fruit? Where's your fruit? If your daughter doesn't have because I could understand where he's coming from. The only thing that I did understand, I could agree with him at the end when he was saying, okay, baby mama, and calling her names and calling his baby's mom. I would never talk about my baby's mamas like that, ever. But whenever he's talking about his baby's moms that way, and he's saying those things, and you could tell that that he has no, like you said, he has no respect for his daughter. And my landing point is, the only part I agree with is maybe she should have given unalienated access to the daughter, because whenever there's divorces and stuff that go on, you never know what happens whenever the family court gets involved in it. And Dr. Umar, you can tell, did not have an impact or a fact where he had a positive effect on his daughter. Who knows? That's the deeper root of it. Whenever you get into the dynamics of how he wants to break up an interracial relationship. Let's talk about the dynamics between black relationships and how black women, in his own words, took him to the family court system and used the family court system against him. Maybe if he would have dated outside his race, that woman wouldn't have took him to the court system. I'm talking. Let's talk hyper. You want to talk hypotheticals? He wants to start throwing black people under the bus.
What?
I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, Tarris.
No, and my sister did not do that. I'm just saying. But Dr. Umar needs to watch where he need to tread lightly, because look at his fruit. Because I'll match fruit with him any day in any aspect.
Tarris, I need to burst your bubble real fast. White women use the family court system just as much as black women do. So we're not going to sit up here and paint this narrative and paint this picture that if he were to get with a white woman, that he would not have had to deal with the family court system. We're not going to do that.
At least that's the way it is with Judge
Number
Judy.
two, I've had the privilege of meeting Dr. Umar. You can see the picture and the video all over my Facebook page if you want to go over there and look at it. I've had the pleasure of meeting this man. I understand why people respond to him. Whether you like it or not, he does have that certain it factor about him that draws people into him, and that's why people invite him out to come give keynote speeches and invite him to come to events and do interviews and do these podcasts. He does have a certain it factor to him that riles something up in people, and it brings people forth to whatever. He is the beacon of light on whatever the issue is that people are trying to discuss in that moment. I will say that I have not always agreed with everything that Dr. Umar has said, particularly when he speaks on black women, because for whatever reason, black women are always fodder. We are always the talking point when we are discussing the black family and how it's failed and how everything that could go wrong is our fault. We are always the number one public enemy when we have that conversation. It gets exhausting. What I will say is that, given the issue that the statement that he issued about his daughter and not wanting to walk her down the aisle and not wanting her wife to be welcome in her home, I think that as somebody who is very focused on my relationship with God and being part of the body of Christ and all these things. I have plenty of friends and family who are also LGBTQ, and I do have my boundaries with certain things. And I've made that very clear, because if you love me, you respect how I feel about the things that I feel, and vice versa. I respect how you feel about the things that you feel. I do think, though, that it's worth mentioning that there are, I think, as Kevin said, there are a lot of places where parents draw the line. I think, though, that when you're calling into question your child's lifestyle choices in regards to their sexuality, I think that if you're somebody who, as Dr. Umar does, you tout that you are for pro-black family and pro-black, family unit and pro-black, traditional family values and all these things. Would you have said the same if your daughter came to you and said, well, yeah, me and this man have been having premarital sex and I am pregnant with this child, but he said he wanted to marry me. Would you walk me down the aisle? If your same answer is not, hell no, I won't walk him down the aisle, or absolutely not, I won't, because I don't believe in the lifestyle that you and that man are living. Y'all have had premarital sex. Y'all have done all these things that are outside of quote unquote traditional family values, and so I cannot support that, because as somebody who believes in the traditional family unit and the traditional family values, I can't support you going about creating this family in a way that is not traditional. You yourself, sir, have a number of children that have not been brought up with traditional family values. You yourself have created a number of broken homes. So I think that it's very hypocritical of you to say, well, yeah, I can't, I love you and you my child, but I can't support you and the ways that you go about living your life because I don't agree with your lifestyle. the lifestyle that you're living, sir, go against most of the things that you preach. And so I think that it's very hard for you to draw that line in the sand with your child and then to still be perceived as if you love and care about and have respect for your child if you're not living what you preach. That's my issue with what he said. Now, if we want to have a conversation, I don't know. I don't know how we got there, but if we want to have a conversation about family court system and how black women are using the family court system to punish men, I would challenge those same people who make those arguments to ask those men who claim to have those issues with the family court system, how far have you been willing to go to deal with that system? Because I don't know a man, I don't have any men in my life who don't take care of their children, number one. But number two, those men who take care of their children have had to deal with the family court system, and when they go and they ask for joint custody or whatever the case may be, they get it. They don't have any issue doing that. If they go and they ask, can I please be put on child support so that she cannot keep my child from me? And that if she does, I can come to the courts and I can say I've been paying my child support. I have made myself available to have my child during the scheduled time. She will get in trouble because if you go through the court, it is not just to protect the mom, it's to protect the father who cares about having custody or joint custody for his children. I don't know a man who's had the experience that you're talking about, Terrace, who actually gave a damn about having custody of his child. I don't know a man.
And you
What I do know, and who I do know, are men who complain about having to pay child support because they don't want to pay child support. It's never been about I want to have my kid. It's never been about I want to have joint custody of my kid. It's been I just don't like that she went to the courts because now I got to pay child support. It's never been it's never been I've gone to the courts and I fought for custody of my child and it's not been given to me because the court is against me. Any man that I know who's gone through that system, you cannot deny a man access to his child if he's paying child support.
I agree
That's
with
just
you.
how the court works.
I agree with you. And I was saying, look at his fruit. He is the product. His fruit is the product of someone who will blame the system and say this black woman put him. I mean, that was my point. I wasn't saying anything about saying black women or white women will do something different. I said the product of what he is going through and what he's experiencing with his daughter is no different than most of us men out here. I think I can't say I haven't experienced the same thing in some aspects of what Dr. Umar is going through, but I wouldn't get on here and be preaching about telling anyone who they should be able to love. Who gives him the right to say who he should be able to love? And if anyone on the Democratic Party's side believes in what he says wholeheartedly, and then they back Kamala Harris and she's married to a white man, or any of these other people who are black women politicians who are married to white men, or where is it different? Where does Dr. Umar say, okay, black men are bunny hopping, but black women can date outside their race? He makes no sense to me.
I
He's never said that though.
I think what you need to definitely delineate here, though, I think there's a difference between telling somebody who they can love or telling somebody what you will and you will not support. So I don't think Dr. Umar Johnson was saying that she can't be with this particular individual or she can't marry him. I don't think I heard him say that. What I think I heard him say is if this is what you're going to do and you want me to walk down the aisle, I can't support that. That's a very different, that's saying something very different than saying you're telling somebody what they can and can't do. What he's saying is, if this is the lifestyle that you're going to choose to live, go do your thing, but don't expect for me to co-sign with that or to come along with the ride or do what you want me to do because I don't believe in that. Right. And I mean, we talk about on this show all the time that, hypocrisy is something that we all, suffer from. And I think to some degree, there's something in every one of our lives that we would preach to somebody else that we're not living, or not following entirely. I think a lot of times parents do that for their kids. They try to preach something to their kids and their kids see that the mom and dad ain't living it. So that's why they don't listen to the advice that the parents, that the parents are trying to live. They see kids see the hypocrisy sometimes better than the adults. To what I would say to the conversation about and some of the things that he said about the baby's mom and an attempt, trying to vilify her or blame her for the situation that the daughter was in. I always say this, people need to take more responsibility for the partners that they choose, you know, and who they choose to create kids with, you know, because that's as much on Dr. Umar, you know, as it is on the woman that he's talking about. So if you got issues with your baby mama, you picked her, dude. That's that's the woman that you chose to lay down with and have a seed with. So whatever you saying about her, that makes your judgment questionable, dude. That makes your ability to discern, you know, quality individuals, pull that in question. So take responsibility of that. Don't just blame her for the state that you feel like your daughter is in. This is the person you chose to mother your child. Yeah. Right. So you got to own that. And I say the same thing to women who complain about the baby's daddy. That is your pick. That was your choice. Own that. Take responsibility for your choice. And to Tara's points, the fruits that you produce from that choice. That's the reality of it. And too many people want to not take responsibility for that. It's easy to blame the other person, but you made that choice.
Absolutely. I want to get Phil's thoughts. Phil, what do you think? You know, how would you handle that situation?
Well, assuming his reason for being opposed to the gay thing is biblical, there's a guy named Steve Sjogren, who was the founding pastor of the Big Vineyard Church here. It's a pretty prominent church. He had an expression I really liked. He said, "Don't major in the minors." In other words, if you're going to talk about the Bible and about Jesus stuff, don't focus on one thing like gays or this, because that is a minor. This guy is majoring in a minor, you know. And I have a close friend who's he's a pastor of a big church, okay, prominent, and I'll guarantee you, whatever they teach in that church, it is marriage between a man and a woman. No question, that's what they teach. But he has a son who's gay, and the son has a boyfriend, blah blah blah, and this guy and his wife welcome them. They go on trips with them. They have them their house. They're very close. And to me, that is a great example of really majoring in the majors, putting the love first ahead of your little checklist of legalisms. And, you know, my son has a lady friend, and for whatever reason, instead of calling her she, he calls her they. I mean, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but you think I'm going to say, son, unless you don't stop using those pronouns, I don't want you over. I love him more than anything in the world. And I don't care what his sexual, regardless of sexual preference or whatever the deal is with pronouns or something. I don't care. That's my son. I love my son. And, you know, this guy, did he say that he's actually, or did one of you say he's not married to the mother of the kid? He's not. Is that correct? It's like, you know, you want to be legalistic, pal? Okay, we'll be legalistic. Okay, I'm not going to associate with somebody who's born out of wedlock or has a child or something like that. I mean, where does
Phil,
it end?
not to get into
anyway.
a theological conversation on what you just said, but since you brought it up, you know, there is a hierarchy to love. And the first commandment and the greatest commandment is to love thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, thy mind. You don't put anything above God, including your children or your spouse. And so one might say that, yes, I can love my child, but I'm not going to love my child more than I love God and what God says he loves. I'm just making a clarification, because I think sometimes if you're going to have that religious conversation, you're going to talk about majoring in the major things. The major thing is that first commandment, that you don't put anything above.
Yeah, but the major thing isn't whether you're gay or not.
It's not whether you're gay or not, but it's about saying, as Dr. Umar said, I love you, but I can't condone what you're doing. Because
Tarris said it very well.
Wait a minute, because if I believe that what you're doing goes against God, I can't love you to the extent that I'm violating.
That begs the question, though.
Come on.
That begs the question, Kevin, right? It begs the question, like, in that scenario, your daughter is in a same-sex relationship. They decide they want to get married, right? Which is a religious construct, right?
Yes.
Of God, right? They want to
get
married.
It depends on it. That I would say yes, but
Right.
people would debate that and say
I'll just take that yes. I'll take
non-religious
that
people
yes.
would say that it's a civic union.
I would
But
take that
I
yes, and
say
it's
I
part of that too.
say
I would take that yes, and so is that condoning it because you allow somebody your daughter's husband or wife to come into your house? How that's not condoning that. That's you're loving your daughter. I can disagree with what you're
Yeah.
doing.
When you don't, it's called being a
Pharisee.
Pharisee.
I'll
That's
say
what it
this:
is.
I can understand if you don't want to attend the wedding, and I say that as somebody who, at least on subjects such as this, I'm quite liberal. I can have a conversation with somebody and understand why they wouldn't want to attend the wedding because of how I feel about marriage. I do believe that marriage is a covenant between you, your spouse, and God. And so, if you feel that however you feel religiously, that I cannot support what I believe is an ungodly union. I can understand that, and I think that even as I mean, I can't empathize because I'm not in this situation.
So what about the example you used before, Ray? What if your kid has sex outside of marriage? Same thing. You're not no, this person's not welcome in here, and I can't
some people would
associate with
say
this.
that
It's like
you
it's
would
like
have you would. I mean, I think Raven gave that example. I think
yeah.
Raven gave that
Well,
example
I
earlier.
don't think
I
it's
mean,
But
look,
but
biblical,
but
in
I-
my humble opinion.
but I'm saying but thank you for that question, Phil, because you're making me think about it. But as I think about it, I feel like I might be able to understand that. In the household that I was raised, I wasn't necessarily told that premarital sex was a sin or was wrong, but I was definitely given the message that it wasn't right. I was definitely given the message that it was not what a righteous woman would do, and it's led to how I currently deal with the concept of sex in my own life and my personal life. A majority of my I think we talked about this. Majority of my peers have no issue with casual sex or casually sexual relationships with other people. That's where I draw the line. I've never been that person because of how I was raised and because of my religious
Yeah, but you
background.
don't reject those friends, Raven. You don't
I
reject
don't
those
reject
friends, do
them, but
you?
I'm also
Because
not
they
taking part in their
exactly.
behavior.
He is in offense. He is in a sense rejecting his daughter. Oh, I love you, sure. But when you say I'm not going to let your spouse come in my house, that is rejecting. That's not
Agreed.
And I'm
loving.
not mad at that. But that's what I'm
Agreed.
saying, Phil. I'm not saying that I agree with him saying that, oh, they can't be in my house. I'm saying that if we're talking specifically about what you consider to be a religious practice, which is marriage, which is the marriage covenant between you, your spouse, and God, if we're simply talking about that, I might be able to understand somebody saying, yeah, I can't go to the wedding, but that doesn't mean that I won't allow you to be in my home or to receive love or grace from me. I just don't know if I would be able to sit with myself if I went to your wedding. I think that's fair.
I'm gonna pull out one of my bad analogies that Nathan hates, and I'm quite certain he's gonna reject this vehemently, wholeheartedly, bro. I've been sitting here
Probably
for the
deservedly
last five
so.
minutes thinking about how you're gonna dissect what I'm about to say here next, and I was gonna say people will exclude you from their house for far less than what you're talking about. So let's just say, for example, if your kids smoke weed, you didn't smoke weed, you didn't allow drugs in your house, and you said to your kid, hey, I'm not going to allow it. And let's just say your kid's spouse smoke weed or use drugs, and you said to your spouse, I'm not going to allow your drug addicted or weed smoking spouse in my house because I don't agree with that, and I don't condone that. Is that not loving them because you won't let them in the house with their drug addicted spouse or their weed smoking friends? Is that not showing love because you don't do that and you don't condone it and you're not going to allow it in your house? Tell me what you think philosophically is the difference between those types of behaviors that would not be condoned and not approving of someone's mate.
It's funny. I was going to make a similar comparison, but I was going to use meth, right? Because, like, if you say to the point you're trying to make, like, if you say, look, and I'm against illicit drug use, and then you bring somebody in my house that's doing that, do I have a right to say, listen, I'm not here? And,
Mhm.
I think it's a fair question,
But wouldn't
despite
that be
what
a
you
little bit
said.
different though? Wouldn't that be just a tad bit different? Because when it comes
Explain.
to hard drug use and you doing that activity in my household, I feel like that it's a bit more dangerous than just my kid being gay and having their spouse around me. You know what I
But
mean?
again,
And that's
Like
the
but
reason
you're
why
again,
bringing
they
Raven,
hard
didn't have
drugs into my
here's what.
home and everything that comes with hard drugs, which is whatever, seedy underbelly comes with the drug world, comes, you're bringing that into my home. And I too personally, and don't nobody else have to feel like this, I feel like addiction comes with a spiritual thing. Like it comes with a spiritual um like danger. I think that it's the way that people say that drug use is a disease. I'll take it a step further. I think that addiction is a spirit. I think the spirit of addiction is a spiritual warfare that you are now inviting into your home, which is just ill advised. That's just my opinion.
See, but Raven,
as a
now
guest.
you are talking things of the spirit or religious theological conversations that don't fly in a secular
This is true.
political conversation these
This is
days.
true.
So part of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to have a religious conversation in the midst of secular politics that tell you that these sorts of things that you're saying are not politically correct, or they're homophobic, or they're these sorts of things. You said that you see meth use as dangerous. To somebody who is ultra religious and who believes that, if you are a religious person who believes that homosexuality is a sin against God, that's no more or less dangerous from a spiritual perspective if you are a hardcore believer than smoking meth. It's like, yes, we see meth because of the physical addiction and the physical damaging things that can be done there. But there are conversations that are the physical, and there are conversations that are of the spiritual. So people who don't subscribe to the spiritual point of view are never going to agree with some of the things that spiritual and religious people are going to say, because it's not politically popular. It's not what is in vogue
Yeah.
for what is being talked about today. So it that's why religion and politics are not great bedfellows, because they don't go well together, because you're going to wind up compromising one for the other. If you're going to go with what the politics say and what is politically correct, then that might make you have to go against something that you believe religiously, or that you can't put voice to, because you're going to be vilified, you're going to be condemned by it. And what I'm saying is, and this is where I say, this is why I began my comments, like, if that is his religious and spiritual conviction, I can't knock him for it. And I can't say that it doesn't mean that he doesn't love his daughter. But what it could say is I don't love it. I don't love what she's doing more than I love God and where I believe I am with that. Now, I know people in the LGBTQ community, that's going to rub a lot of
He's a
people the wrong way,
hypocrite.
and it always has. Like,
But
that
Kevin,
is
he's a hypocrite for that. If that, and again, that sounds like a valid point, to the point that Raven made up. If you really feel that spiritually based, then why are you having a kid out of wedlock?
Hypocrites. Here's the point where I say this is that we all sin and fall short of the glory of God. So no matter how you might feel about someone else's sin and whatever else, somebody can point to a myriad of other things that we all got going on, right? And that's where I think, to the larger point of what Phil was saying, is that yes, love has to lead us in every interaction. And I'm not saying that you vilify people, that you beat them down, that you pass judgment on them. But what I am saying is that we all go through life every day drawing a line about what we will stand for and what we won't stand for. And within that, there's a whole lot of things that if people wanted to point it out, well, it's like, well, you will stand strong for this, but you will let this go. Like, people can always throw contradictions, because none of us are rock solid,
None of
on
us
everything.
None of us is perfect, and that's the whole point. So, for instance, I don't even know if Dr. Umar Johnson is a religious person, and if so, I don't know what his faith is. Let's assume he's a Christian, which means Christ-like. What would Christ do? Would Christ say, you know what, I'm not coming to your wedding because you're doing something I don't like? I don't know.
So
from what
Christ
I remember in the Bible, Jesus was hanging around with sinners, because nobody is above the other person. So again, it
so
goes
here's
back
what I
to
would
this.
say.
To me, this is just real quick. To me, this is Dr. Umar playing to Instagram, trying to a virtue signal about who he really is, and you don't really love your daughter. You can say, look, I am vehemently, religiously against what you're doing. But life is short. You don't know if that daughter, she walk out the door, you may never see her again. And you've missed an opportunity because you caught up in your feelings and you're just as much as a hypocrite as everybody else is. So why don't you give your daughter, if you're a Christian, the same grace that Christ did in the Bible and live your life and move on?
Yeah,
I
that's, I
got
mean,
one.
that's,
I
that's
got one for
solid.
y'all too. What if Dr. Umar's daughter, she turns back from the LGBTQ community and goes back to the heterosexual community, and then she gets a snow bunny, and he gets her pregnant, and Dr. Umar has a mixed grandson? Would he love him, or would he call him the names that he calls everybody else? Then we see what he really is made of. Because back where I'm from, all these redneck dudes that have them raise their daughters to be racist, they be the first one to jump on black dudes' things and have these little mixed kids from where I'm from. And I would like to see Dr. Umar's daughter have a mixed kid, and then that baby come out, and then let's see what he wants. Let's see if he's still on that Pan-African, all that stuff. We Americans, man, all of us together. Let's see what he talked then.
I can see that really has sticking it to your side.
That bothered Tarris' soul.
And I get it.
Snow bunnies never
get
is
it.
on his heart.
Because he's in an
man.
interracial relationship. If I was too, it might bother me the
Hey,
same way.
I
but
say
get it.
preach, brother, preach.
And he came in Dr. Umar. He don't do nothing for me. No, there's not one thing. I'll listen to what he's saying, but I'm like,
Tarris,
I'll be like, where's your school?
pulpit.
Where's your
Tarris,
school?
you belong
Where's
in
your
the
school?
pulpit.
Where's your school? You tell me who I can love. Where's your school, man? Where's all that money at? Where you are a grifter. You're a grifter. You know more. And then people following this guy, man, like, oh, Dr. Umar, Dr. Umar, man, you are no different. You're no different than the preacher pimps. He's a preacher pimp is what he is. Good Lord.
I would also just like to throw out there that because I've been guilty of quoting that before, that Jesus used to hang out with sinners, but we got to put context to that because we just have to. He wasn't just doing it for the hell of it. He was doing it because he wanted to offer them the message that he was preaching and also offer them salvation. So it wasn't like Jesus was just kicking it with sinners because that was where all the fun was. It was for a purpose. And so when you say that, you have to add that context. And so not that I'm disagreeing with you, Nathan, but what I will say is that if you are going to take that approach of the grace that God showed to the sinners around him, you also have to add the context that he was not there just to be there, but he was there to show God's love and compassion and empathy, but also salvation through Christ by God. And so
Right.
if you are going to put yourself in that position, you must also be a witness. You must also be a vessel for God to be able to work through you or minister through you or witness through you in order to be the loving correction that sinners might actually need, or to be that avenue for a relationship to Christ that sinners do require. And so I think that if you're going to be that person who is going to be around sinners, you have to have that context, which I try to be. I have a number of friends and loved ones that I said are part of the LGBTQ community. I witness every chance I get. I speak to them when whatever. It don't even have to be about their love life or their sexuality. But whenever given the chance, I will let them know that the reason why I have peace, the reason why I have joy, is because of my relationship with Christ. And so I don't miss an opportunity to be Christ-like when I am quote unquote hanging around with sinners. I just wanted to add that context.
Let me add the real context on what Raven said, Nathan, because you first of all, let me acknowledge you made a solid point that I want to get to. But first of all, we're all sinners. So Jesus was he was always hanging with sinners when he was here, because we're all sinners, saved by grace. So basically, I think that's sort of the point where Jesus was trying to get with the Pharisees, is that the Pharisees saw themselves as not that. And they saw themselves as above everybody else. And that's why Jesus was always hitting them with the hypocrites, because he's like, oh, y'all don't even see that y'all ain't no better than the people that you looking down on, because we're all sinners. So this notion that Jesus hung with sinners, yeah, he was hanging with mankind. So basically that's all he did the whole time. For the 32 years that he was here on this earth, he was hanging with sinners all day, every day. Just
No, I think you've kind of missed that. Now, who am I to tell the pastor this? But it wasn't. Yeah, everybody sins.
There is
Blah
no
blah.
but.
But he made a excuse me, he said something. Didn't he say that people who are healthy don't need a doctor? It's the
Yeah,
sick who need a
and
doctor.
who did he
And he
come
was
for? He
drawing a
came for us
He
all.
comparison.
came for all of
He
mankind.
was drawing a comparison. He was drawing a comparison though there between like the Pharisees and the tax
See,
collectors.
the Pharisees,
okay?
though,
And so
the Pharisees were people like some people that we have today who think they look fine on the outside, but really the cancer is eating them up on the inside. So just because you look like or think you don't need a doctor doesn't mean that you don't. And so I think that that's the larger message that Jesus was trying to get. He died for all of us, the Pharisees, the Roman soldiers, everybody who was there. So that's why I say that point. The other thing I would say, Nathan, is don't get it twisted. Just because Jesus did that, just because he hanged didn't mean that he condoned, right? He didn't condone, but he didn't condemn. So that was the thing. Jesus never condemned people, no matter how bad they were, because remember, God wants to save everybody. He doesn't want to see anybody perish. But unfortunately, some people are going to perish, not because God wants them to, but because they make wrong decisions. And so all the gospel is trying to get people the good news, the right information to keep them from perishing, because God doesn't want any of us to perish. But we have the choice of whether or not to accept that, to take that as truth or not. And wish everybody would, but not everybody will.
Again, I'm no Bible scholar, but I'm no Bible scholar, but I was forced to go to Sunday school and church for years and years and years until I got old enough to say, you know what, enough is enough. Just put my foot down and start hanging out at the park all day and lying to my grandparents and telling them I was going to church. How you gonna force me to go and you sitting here having breakfast? I ain't going for it. But what I can remember, I just don't believe that. It's just my personal belief. I believe that if Jesus was among us today, he wouldn't have a problem with gays and lesbians, because if all sin is the same, if that is in fact a sin, it ain't no different than anybody else. And I think that was the point I was trying to make, right? Like, we think that certain sins are worse than others.
Jesus would not be as in favor of ostracizing what humans
he'd probably hang out with drug. You know, he'd also probably
drug
hang
dealers,
out with
prostitutes.
Drug dealers.
I just feel like human beings, if you really believe in God, then let God do his work. And in this reality, let's treat people with respect and kindness and empathy, be Christ-like. And if you really believe that there is a judgment day, everybody's got a judgment day, and the Almighty, right, will take care of all of that. You don't have to. He or they or it or she is going to take care of it, right? I say it that way because I don't know what God is and who God is. God probably uses personal pronouns, but that's something we can get into on another day. Hey, listen, I got another video for you.
I got to say this real quick.
I knew you had to say something.
I just saw Nat Turner's comment, man. Nat, that's my dude. I don't know Nat. Maybe I do. Maybe I met Nat out somewhere in the city. But as far as in the chat room, man, he be cracking me up. He talking about, I feel like a collection plate is about to go around Barbara Sapp. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, close the doors. Close the doors. We need 40,000, Nat Turner. We need 40,000, bro. I know you got it. Come on right now.
Absolutely. 40,000. And listen, I got another video for you. This is an off the beaten path type of thing. Okay. And it is a video of Will Smith, who is delivering a rap. That's right. Will Smith is a rapper. He's of our generation.
Dropped the album.
And I just want to know whether you think this is hot or not. Simple as that. It's not like a big deal or anything. Just a little entertainment break because we be going hard with the serious topics. Check this out and tell me what you think. Oh, let me stop real quick. There is some adult language. I just want to give you a heads up. You might be at work. You might be with younger people. You might want to turn it down.
Are you saying that for my benefit?
No, I'm just saying it for the benefit of people in the audience. As someone who has a child and listens to podcasts, I appreciate it. So I want to extend that to anybody in the audience, or you might be at work. There is some adult language. Check this out.
Lemonade. Okay, I like this. Yeah, y'all got me a little nervous. I know that I be on some other shit. I know that I'm different. I be on some y'all don't understand it. I don't mention it. Made it to the top of Hollywood without a membership. Killed them in July, then I switched to my December shit. I be overcoming shit that y'all be having trouble with. Let them run their mouths. I mean, really, that's what come with this. They built a wall, but I'm jumping it and loving it. They want me to be done with it, but I'm still having fun with it. Writing songs, writing checks, writing history, righting wrongs, but I'm still right mentally. I go to sleep and my ancestors visit me. They surrounded me, gave me the vision vividly, gave me a lion to protect me in this industry. Now I just walk and he chew through my enemies. Feel like I'm just getting started, they tried to finish me. I'm like the universe, infinite, there's no end in me. This is the bounce back. Watch Will, y'all, this is the bounce back. Here come the bounce back. Keep your eyes on him, this is the bounce back. With these mics, I feel like I'm Customato. 100 rounds of life, but still boxing my shadow. Yeah, I took a knee, never threw in the towel though. Hip-hop's Messi, Neymar, and Ronaldo. Goal scored on these boys. I done won damn near every single award on these boys. Sold out movie theaters and even tours on these boys. Feeling like a mop wiped the floor with these boys. People ask me how I do it. I just bite off more than I can chew, then I chew it. Yeah, y'all jokers thought I blew it. I pulled the pin out the grenade on purpose when I threw it. And even though I'm an action star, sometimes I'ma act bizarre. Cause I'm an artist at heart. I'm not just an actor, y'all. This is the bounce back. Watch Will, y'all. This is the bounce back. Here come the bounce back. Keep your eyes on them. This is.
Well, that's the bounce back. Hot or not? Hot or not? What do you
I'll
think?
go. Let me go.
Go right ahead.
I'm feeling that. As an artist and as a 51-year-old, 52-year-old artist, about to be 52-year-old artist, that brought back so many memories because I can remember mowing the grass when I'm like 13, 14, the brand new funk will come on and Will Smith. This is a nightmare on my street. Parents just don't understand Will. I'm talking about before the Fresh Prince when Will was spitting bars. I'm talking about spitting that Philly stuff, man. I'm talking about that hard. I seen a video with Gilly and him, and Gilly's imitating the raps, and he know brand new funk. Delivered the Armitage. They did cut DJ Jazzy Jeff on the ones and twos. Nobody, them and Cut Creator, that's hip hop. You talking about hip hop, and the fact that or Will Smith is coming back and he's showing the older generation that there's no cap on creativity. If anything else, Will Smith is showing if you think he's trash, beat him. Spit something harder than he just spit right there at 50-some years old. That shit was, I'm sorry about the mother. That was hot. What he just spit right there, he took you on a journey. He told a story. He took 16 bars, did a hook, 16 more bars. He took me on a musical journey. I was bopping the whole time because the nostalgia fact of it, of me being a Will Smith fan from a long time, since Nightmare on Freddy Krueger. Parents just don't understand. This is when hip hop first came out, and parents just didn't understand. I was 14 years old. My parents didn't understand. Will Smith understood. I'm talking, so it hits me in a different chord, and also being an artist and forever going to rap. I don't care. In my grave, my mama encourages it. When she was alive, my parents, my sisters, my brothers, my kids, I'm still going to pick up a pen and I'm gonna write because I have the capability to do it. If somebody doesn't like it, out rap me. And I feel like that's the way Will Smith is coming off. And I just love to see it. And I appreciate you bringing that kind of entertainment to this programming because it just did something good. It's motivating.
Yeah, Will has always been musically talented. You know, he's had lyrics, as Tarris said, going back, you know, Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff. You know, you grew up on that hip hop back in the day. It's different, you know, it's not hardcore. That was never who Will was, but he can get into that. You know, he's a diverse rapper. He can kind of do the parents just don't understand, and he's done, you know, some more hardcore stuff. I've always been a fan, not hardcore in terms of like gangster rap, but you know, I mean, Will can put some lyrics together. And so I've always been a fan of I've always been a fan of his music and of his entertainment. But I say the same thing that I said last time we kind of had Will Smith, something related to Will Smith. Like for me, it's just ever since the Oscars and Chris Rock, like it's hard for me to look at Will Smith the same. Like he lost something for me. I'm just talking about for me. He lost something for me after that moment, because I think he, up until that moment, even with all of the craziness, it was like there was like a series of stuff. Like when he and Jada was into all of that, and she was sleeping with her son's friend, and like they got into this weird area where I think Will had kind of been up here in the entertainment world for a while, particularly among Black stars, and then just the weirdness came in, and then the Chris Rock thing, and it's like he lost that status in my eyes that he once had. Doesn't mean I don't, still like Will Smith, but he definitely, I think, lost the status that he had through that period, that it's just that I don't think he'll ever get it back. It's kind of like Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods was at the top of his golf game, it's like he'll never be that again. And Will Smith will never be again what he was at the pinnacle of his popularity after what happened with Chris.
Now, I heard all that, but hot or not, does the man spit fire?
Oh, hot! I give it. I mean, I told you I'm a fan of his music.
All
so,
right. Raven, Phil.
I'll give credit where credit is due. He had a couple of punchlines that I was like, okay, I didn't know you was coming with that energy, Will. I'll give you that. But whether or not it could stand up against some of my favorite artists, I just don't think so. I think that the most appealing factor about it is the nostalgia. It's 50-year-olds like Tarris who get to tap back into that nostalgic era of Parents Just Don't Understand and Summertime. And I kind of a little bit grew up on Will Smith because when I was a kid he was in Men in Black, and all of the music that came from him doing Men in Black and the soundtrack. Like I'm hip to a little bit of Will Smith. He had a little early 2000s era that I loved, but like he just could never compete with a J. Cole, with a Kendrick Lamar, there's no universe in which they could have come out and be on the same playing field musically. The only appealing thing about that rap was the nostalgia and getting to see somebody who came out at the birth of hip hop almost kind of play around with it's kind of like being a big kid and going back to your elementary school and being like, dang, everything in here is different. But I can still remember having fun here. And if I try hard enough, I can create some fun for myself, but it ain't gonna never be the same. And I just think that it just ain't gonna never be the same. He's been away from music too long to have been able to grow and develop over the last 30 some years to actually play on a level playing field with people who are currently on the scene and killing it. If we strictly going by your spectrum, hot or not, unfortunately, to the brokenhearted 50 somethings, I'm gonna have to say not, because he just couldn't carry himself against what's
Blasphemy.
hot right now. He just couldn't do it.
You are not allowed in my house. That is against my religion.
I got to rebuttal a little bit.
But can we just stop pretending that music today, rap, hip hop, can even hold a candle to what those got, what the originals used to put? Look, Raven, I got much respect for the younger generation, but I'm not gonna sit here and say that any of these cats, maybe short of Kendrick Lamar, but most of these cats that's out here now is garbage. They ain't talking about nothing. I mean, say what you say about
how much actual modern hip hop do you listen to?
Got today is a hook and a beat. They got a hook and a beat that keep you in it. The rest of the song, they ain't talking about nothing. The old school lyricists would take, as Tarris said, they would take you on a journey. They had a theme. They had something that they were telling you about. It was entertaining to listen to, and they had lyrics. And so I think like there's a lot of, I can't sit here and compare. And I know I sound like an old head because the old heads used to say the same thing about their music and our music of that day. And so maybe I'm a slave to that. But from a lyrical standpoint, there are only a few, and I will give you, you got your Kendricks, you got a couple other cats out there that's doing some really good stuff that, even I will listen to, but there's a whole lot more garbage out there than I think premium rap artists. I mean, you got to look at LL Cool J. I think somebody mentioned him in like LL could still spit fire and hang with most of these young cats that's out there doing it today. I mean, LL has he has transcended the game. I mean, in terms of the fire that LL
But I
can
feel like
come with.
I feel like if he was just the average 50 something, he didn't have that prior nostalgia of being the great LL Cool J at one point, you wouldn't be saying that, Kevin. You
No,
wouldn't even know who he is
and
because
LL
none of
put
his
out an
raps
album.
would make it to the mainstream. We would not know who an LL Cool J is in 2025 because we wouldn't have any reference for him. It's
LL
the
just put out a
nostalgia that
LL
got you caught up, Kevin. I
LL
promise
put
you
out
it
an
is.
album in 2024. LL put out an album in 2024, so we can do reference whenever Will Smith put out his album and see how they did. One thing that we're not taking consideration is Will Smith's global touch. There's a Japan rapper Toshibi or something like that, and Will Smith jumped on his remix in a car in a Lamborghini and did a remix on a song or this guy from Japan and blew him to the stratosphere.
Because he's Will Smith, the movie star that is known globally for making million and billion-dollar movies.
But he was rapping.
Not because he is hot
he
in hip hop right now. That's not what that
He
is.
might not be hot in hip hop in the United States, but in Japan, he's very relevant, and he's so relevant he couldn't get on anybody's song in the United States of America and make them relevant. But he went all across to Japan and got on Tomi Shibuka or Tomachi. Tomi Shibuka. And it's a chant song they do. And Will Smith got on there and ripped fire bars on there, and he sat and did a video in a Lamborghini and turned this Japan's kid's life completely around. So I mean, I think Will is
But again,
relevant
I
forever.
think that you're misrepresenting the fact that it's the star power of Will Smith. Like it's not the music ability, it's the star power that comes with being Will Smith that does something like that for a kid in Japan. Now, if you want to talk about LL Cool J, if I'm just and this is I know I'm gonna get cussed out for this because I'm sitting with a bunch of OGs right now. I don't even know if I care for LL Cool J's raps like that. If I'm being real with you, like I think that he was cool for the '80s because I've heard some of his recent music. He released a song with what is her name? Oh, what is her name? What was it? Janae Aiko, I think, who is a very popular R&B artist right now, I believe. They did a song together, and that was on the radio for a while. I actually kind of like. No, it wasn't. Was it Janae? No. It was somebody else. But either way, he did release a song in 2024 or 2023, either or, and it was a pretty decent song. But the song was great because it didn't try to play into what's cool in music right now. It had a very nostalgic feel to it, and so you were accepting of it because when you think LL Cool J, you think early 90s, you think late 80s, you think nostalgia. And so they played into that, and he produced a great music record that gave people that nostalgic feel. And so it could be played on the radio. But if you're trying to put that man on any of the hottest beats that are being produced right now in 2025, he will not hold a candle to
I
what's happening
disagree,
out here on these hip
Raven.
hop streets. And I'm not talking pop rap because there's a difference. And I think that that's what some of the OGs don't really be understanding sometimes. What you hear on the
Good
radio,
rap for
most of that
LL.
is pop. It's pop music. Rap, hip hop, and rap is no longer what we used to know it as. It has become mainstream, and therefore, it is just another genre of pop music. Whatever sells quickly and fast, and we can get it out there, and we can get it played in the clubs, and we can get it on radio rotation. It's pop music these days. That is not hip hop. What is actual hip hop that can call itself hip hop in 2025, you're not going to hear that on the radio. You're not going to hear it at the barbecue. You're not going to hear it at the family party. It's going to be that stuff that your kids are listening to that you have no idea about because true hip hop will always and forever be underground. It will never be the stuff that you hear in the mainstream. And if it does go mainstream, that artist at some point they're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to continue to make stuff that is hot on the underground and stay independent, or am I going to bend the knee to my label and become a pop artist because that is what makes me and my label the most money? It's unfortunate. A lot of great hip hop artists end up becoming a pop rap artist because it's what's the money maker these days. But if we're talking real hip hop, if we're talking people who are very like adamant about preserving their craft, it's some contenders out here, and it ain't just J. Cole, it ain't just Kendrick Lamar. I just named them because that's who everybody is familiar with. They are kind of unicorns in hip hop right now who can maintain artistry and still play around in that mainstream vein because it's just so good that you can't help but to move to it. You don't have a lot of that anymore, but there are some hip hop dudes and some hip hop women who still are making actual real hip hop. Will Smith and LL Cool J could never contend with them, but you don't know about them because they're not mainstream. I can, and
Listen,
if
Raven,
you
I'm gonna
want me
tell you
to,
this.
if you want me to, as a younger music head, I'll send you a playlist. Just let me know. But they exist. They do
Listen,
exist.
here, I almost think of this as Raven. What you saying is you're thinking about like somebody who from the streets who made it. Maybe they live in a nice neighborhood, they drive a nice car,
Not
and
necessarily.
you think because they live in those neighborhoods that they done forgot how to be grimy with the streets and throw hands until you run up on them and you test them and you find out they're just not some bougie black person living out in the suburbs, that they really do know what it's like in the streets. And I think that that's what you're missing about Will Smith and LL Cool J. These brothers, before Will was the Fresh Prince, this brother was on the streets of Philly. Same way with LL Cool J. These are brothers whose background you might forget because they are popular and they are commercial. But let's not forget, let them go back to the dog ain't gone just because they're commercial. And that's what I'm saying. I think like that's where maybe, and I get it, you're not from that
I'm
generation
not,
and
I'm not
the
even saying
history may
that
not
though.
be
I'm
there.
just saying that
But
they were grimy
I would
for
love
their
to see.
time, but for right now, it just don't apply. They were grimy for the '90s. They were grimy for the '80s, but I don't think they can bring that same level of quote unquote grime to 2025 with the issues and the stuff that real street dudes and street females is dealing with right now, and spit that verse in a poetic way that connects with who is the cultivators of hip hop right now. We have to be honest. When I was in media school, I did a whole entire documentary on hip hop. I love hip hop. It is my favorite genre of music because it is the music of my people. If we're talking about, quote unquote grime and street cred, you have to also understand that hip hop itself has always been for the children. I will quote Wu Tang all day. Wu Tang's for the children, and so is hip hop. And so if
It's
we're
been
talking
that
about
way.
hip hop and the real deal, like the culture of hip hop, it is what the kids say it is. And so if the kids are saying that, yeah, okay, LL was cool in the '90s, LL was cool in the '80s, but what none of the stuff he's talking about make any sense to me now, because they wasn't talking about popping mollies and none of and popping oxys and doing perk 30s in the '80s and the '90s. But I can go to the block right now, and if I go to the block right now, they popping perk 30s and they doing this and they doing that, and they won't talk about the trap house in the '90s, and they wasn't talking about the trap house in the '80s. But if I listen to my favorite rapper, who is, I don't know, YFN, whoever, like, all the rappers these days, they got like random assortments of letters in their names or whatever the hell. It's different now. But you get what I'm saying? Like, the streets are different, and therefore hip hop is different. So if the streets are different, hip hop has to grow and evolve with the streets. And if the streets are different than what they were in the '90s and the '80s, whatever you can rap about from the '90s and the '80s will not hit the same for these kids who are dealing with street life right now in 2025. It's just not going to.
I don't
It
think
ain't
the
gonna
streets are
meet.
different. I don't
It's
think the
not gonna
streets are that
meet.
different. In fact, I think the streets were worse back in the '80s when you was dealing with the crack explosion and the way it decimated our communities. But for me, in terms of my personal taste, I like it all. I'm old school, but I love the new school. It's plenty. I'm not one of those older dudes that's like, oh, new school music is not as good as old school. It's all good. It just
I'll never
depends.
say that.
It's
I'll
just
never. I'll
depends.
never make that
It's
argument.
all good. In the
Yeah.
'80s, there were artists that I didn't like, and in the '90s, there were artists that I didn't like, and in the 2000s, there was artists that I didn't like, and right now, there's artists that I don't jive with, and there were artists that I did jive with in all of those decades. So it comes down to personal taste. I see the creativity even more so because it's just more of a proliferation. Like you said, hip hop is mainstream, but I love what these young cats is doing. I vibe to it, listen to it all the time. But sometimes I'm in the mood for the '80s and the '90s and 2000s, and I vibe to that as well. I don't see it as much as a competition as a lot of people do. Hey
Just
Phil,
have a message.
you've been
That's all
silent.
I
Somebody
had.
said you were checking out. I don't want you to check out, Phil. I can see you got those sleepy eyes. What do you think?
No, I would say you guys have kind of gotten to know me over the last few months, and if if you had to pick like one word to describe me, I don't think the word hip would come up.
Herman.
I feel a little bit like Tom Hanks on that SNL skit Black Jeopardy. Have you guys seen that? You ever seen
Yeah,
No,
that?
I've
I did
seen
see
it.
that. Yeah.
Just Google. All right, Google it. But no, normally I feel that everyone is entitled to my opinion, but in this case, I think I'll withhold it.
All right, one last topic before we roll out of here. This is a more political sort of topic. Tomorrow, if you don't know, is Liberation Day. And this is the day when our president, Donald Trump, I guess he's going to put tariffs on all the countries around the world now, starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, there's going to be a big old presentation or something. He's calling it Liberation Day because Americans have been taken advantage of and blah, 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 blah. And with Trump's tariffs, at least what he's saying anyway, he's going to use this as a tool to make America great again. Have you heard about it? If so, what do you think about Trump's idea in terms of using tariffs? Is this the great liberator that we've been waiting for?
If only Liberation Day was liberating America from him, then it would be a holiday that I would absolutely endorse and say we should all celebrate. Unfortunately, the only liberation that is going to be is liberating American people from their money, because Trump's tariff strategy is all this is going to do is it's going to be a tax on everybody. I mean, if you haven't already seen it, I mean, there are so many things that whether it's things that I collect or food that I buy or whatever, everybody is at the prices of everything are going up. And what everybody is saying is that the price of goods are going up because of the tariffs. And who is paying that? It ain't the other countries. It's you and me paying it when we go to the cash register to get what we gonna get. And, I think even I heard a Republican elected official say this the other day, like, yeah, down the road, this might be a winning strategy, but in the meantime, we might all be dead by the time it gets there. Basically saying that, a whole lot of people are going to suffer and lose while Trump is trying to run out this 50 or 100-year economic game that he wants you to believe is good for America. What good is it for me if I ain't around to see it? I mean, look, the reality is that many people voted for him or whoever they voted for because they wanted to see change in their lives right now, not 50 years from now. I'm not going to be here in 50 years, I mean, unless I'm one of them, super agers or one of them 300-year-old people that's still getting Social Security, like Trump said, but it's insane. And hey, it's just more typical Trump nonsense that's just going to wind up hurting more people and liberating them from the money in their wallet.
Mm-hmm. Liberation for the rich to be taken care of by the poor. That's what TNT says, one of our crew members. Hey, TNT. Oh, I agree with everything you just said. Anybody else want to jump in?
Well,
Yeah, it's just another one of them ridiculous things that is being put out there to agitate and cause conversation. And personally, I feel like be a distraction to what we all really should be focused on. Like it's just one of those things. Like he's gotten into the groove of saying whatever controversial thing comes to mind, and then letting the media go crazy with it, and then giving them a moment to kind of play around with it and have people give these dissertations on the internet and spiral down the rabbit hole, and then in a week or so he'll say something else ridiculous and we'll be right back here talking about it.
I kind of agree with that too. Trump's just negotiating right now, and it, like you said, like who knows if it's going to hurt or help anybody in the future? Who knows what's going to happen? I would suggest, like I've said on this program several times, make sure that you got yourself in order. Make sure you take care of yourself and your loved ones during this time. The clock is ticking. I've said Trump's got 100 days to go through and try his strategy before the Congress and Supreme Court and the federal comes in and starts knocking down all his executive orders. And then after that, they go into the midterms. So we're almost through. I think we're probably halfway through this 100 days of Trump just throwing stuff out there to see what it'll stick. And, I believe that this is Trump's negotiation strategy. And the victor gets the spoils. Like if you look at when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, after they went to the January 6th, they had the press conference, the Never Forget Memorial for January 6th. They made a big deal about it because they wanted us to forever ingrain in our society, using the media and using their influence, to never forget January 6th. Fast forward to Trump's administration and how we've been talking about the script writers and the narratives and the things like this. I really don't get this. I really don't understand why they're trying to make this Liberation Day such a big deal, unless it's something bigger behind it or it's a bigger distraction from what's going on. But the countdown is real to how many more days is left for Trump and Elon Musk to have their run at things, and then things will start to balance out. I would also say to anybody that's listening, as the stock market goes down, find something you like, and as it's correcting yourself, take care of yourself in the future. But all this tariff stuff is just more smoke and mirrors, more just stuff to think about, more stuff for us, like Raven said, for us to talk about, but it's nothing big.
Phil, what's your take?
You know, I heard a good commentary recently about really explaining point by point how these tariffs work. And what they explained was that it kind of like what Nathan said about who's paying for it. But actually, if you're like, let's say, a Canadian seller of lumber, okay, and basically what a tariff does is it increases the cost of the lumber. It just artificially, it's a tax paid by the seller. But the person, but what this explained is what really happens is the importer, the United States importer, pays, in order to buy it, they have to pay the added cost to the lumber guy from Canada. Okay, so as some of you have said, it's just basically increasing the costs for, and you can assume that importer, United States importer, passes on much of that cost to us, the customers. And I thought that was a good explanation. As far as this thing, I hear a lot about, what's Trump doing? Is he got a plan here? Is he threatening them with it? But then, I think I told you, when I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted white collar crime. I prosecuted con men. And here's the thing about con men. They can't think long term. They don't have that ability. Because you see, to think long term, you have to have some care or some concern for somebody usually. They can't. So I wouldn't try to find a grand plan in what he's doing, because it's not consistent with who he is. He's a con man, okay? And those guys don't have long-term goals. And finally, I would say, and unfortunately, Kevin Gordon hasn't been here to discuss this, but, I get really tired of being told that I'm like a liberal or something because I'm opposed to most of what Donald Trump does. I mean, free trade has always been a Republican issue. It was the Democrats that wanted tariffs because of the unions and stuff like that. Free trade is a traditional Republican conservative issue. But people in this country, particularly the Republicans, have been so brainwashed that if Trump says something, they decide that's conservative. And so, anyway,
Yeah,
we'll
I
see
agree
what
here
happens.
to everything you just said, for sure. Tarris used the term, what was the term you said? Negotiation tactic. I don't believe it's a negotiation tactic at all. Why is
Yeah.
Trump doing this? He's doing it because he can. It's one of the things that as the US president, you can do when you decide to without Congress getting behind you. Trump is a child. He's having tantrums. He just wants to do something and then go back to the golf course because he spent 9 of the last 10 weekends on the golf course while the markets are crashing and people are losing their jobs and people are losing their Social Security and Medicaid. Every weekend, he's at the golf course. He doesn't really care. He even
And
said,
you
they
know,
asked him,
Nathan,
he even put out a statement this
Nathan,
week saying he doesn't care if the price of automobiles go up. You know why? Because Trump has enough money that 10, 20, 30, 40, even $100,000 doesn't mean anything. It means
Right.
He
nothing
need to
to
hand
him
deliver
and his
Teslas
friends.
whenever he feel like it.
Right.
He
It
don't
means
care
nothing.
about no car.
But to us, to the average,
another thing to keep
people out
in
here, real
mind
quick,
is
let me finish up. To the average people out here, oh, that means a whole lot. With the sticker price is $30, $40, $50,000 more. That means a whole lot.
Nathan, you ain't even got to be talking about that much money. You can be talking about
$10,000.
$20 more is the difference between making or breaking somebody. You ain't even got to get into the hundreds or thousands.
I don't think he has any larger. I think that in Trump's mind, he thinks that these tariffs are like a cudgel that he can use to like whip other countries into submission. In his head, I think he truly believes it. And to Phil's point, whatever comes out of his mouth, the majority of MAGA just believes it, whether it's right, wrong, or makes sense or not. So this is what you're saying. You got a 70-something, nearly 80-year-old man who was born with a platinum spoon in his mouth, who's having tantrums and trying to get back on his enemies, and he's just pressing buttons and sitting back at the golf course laughing about it, and he don't give a damn about you, me, or anybody else.
Trump is.
And back when he hit his first term, the difference, I know you guys know this because it's been reported a lot, he actually had some real adults and intelligent people, like his trade advisor, I think, or was Gary Cohn, I think, who basically tried to persuade him not to do this. But see, he learned his lesson. He doesn't have any real advisors. He doesn't have anybody who's going to actually disagree with him. Okay, he just has a bunch of yes men, and by and large, incompetent yes men. So those chains that were on him, though, or obstacles to prevent him from doing crazy stuff, they're not there anymore.
Donald Trump is your typical rich person. Okay, let's understand, and I actually know some people who are wealthy, and they all sort of think this way, that everybody works for them and that everybody ought to do what they say and they don't get challenged. And so what Trump didn't have sense enough to realize his first time through was he thought he was going to get the same thing his first time through, but he ran into resistance of people like what Phil said. So this time he said, I ain't going to have that. I'm only going to surround myself with people who are going to do what I say to do unquestioned. And he's trained his base to be the same way, to not question what he says or what he does. And this is what typical people who have money have, because most people are falling all over themselves because they recognize that people who have something that everybody wants, which is basically money or resources. And that can bend a lot of people, as we see Elon Musk doing right now, just going around throwing millions of dollars here or there, trying to influence elections. Is that, money has a powerful tug and pull on people, and people who have money are used to getting their way. And that's where Donald Trump is at. And he has that's the thing that's always amazed me about people who don't have anything feeling like this guy relates to them. He couldn't be farther away from his base in terms of understanding what their lives are like than anybody. He, like you said, if you ask Donald Trump how much a gallon of milk costs, he would have no clue. You know why? Because he don't go to the grocery store. He don't shop. He got people who do. That for him.
But do you remember? Real quick, do you remember when he was like, groceries? What a wonderful word. That's because he don't do any grocery shopping. Donald Trump
McDonald's, he might know that. He could probably give you the whole value menu and everything at McDonald's. Yeah. But short of that, Trump ain't dealing in any of that stuff. Here's what you need to look out for with these tariffs. And I will say this, Trump has been consistent in terms of the narrative that he's always perpetrated about our allies and people overseas. Like even going back to his first term, he's been on this thing about, America's being taken advantage of, and we're just being treated so badly by the rest of the world, and they think we're fools. Like these tariffs fall along that same narrative that at least he's been consistent, in that message that, the United States is the joke of the world and everybody's taking advantage of us and they're laughing about it. And this is how he couches this tariff argument in there. But not only will you feel it in your pocket, but when your favorite restaurant that you love to go to, that you go there and they're no longer open, you can thank the tariffs, because the restaurant industry is already one that has very razor thin margins and is very tough to operate in. And it's already been said that restaurants are going to lose $12 billion, that these tariffs are going to cost them $12 billion and as much as 30% in profit loss. That's a whole lot of restaurants. And this is just one sector that we're talking
Going
about,
out of business.
that is going to be going out of business. And you're going to start seeing them dropping like flies here in a minute, because to exactly what Phil said, the food and beverages that are being imported into this country from Mexico and Canada and other places, they got to pay those costs. And guess who they're going to pass those costs on to if they survive? Is you and me when those meals go up. And what are the first thing that people are going to do when stuff gets too expensive? They're going to stop patronizing places. And that is going to be the death knell for a lot of these places. And that's what's ahead for us.
That's all I got, folks. As I do at the end of every show, speak now or forever hold your peace. Hold your peace. Was there something that you missed or you want to come back to or want to challenge somebody? I love a good challenge. Anybody want to challenge something that was said, or are we all good?
I just wanted to reiterate real fast that I can't remember if we talked about this today or not, but I know I talked about it yesterday on my podcast. Please don't get up in arms about this whole idea of third term. It's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen.
All right. Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that, but we'll see. We can save it for
Absolutely,
next time.
we can do that, but it just there are too many hoops that he would have to jump through to make it happen.
Or to put it another way, the question is he going to be in the White House after 2028? That's probably the better question. And I think if I had to, my opinion is yes, but assuming he's still alive.
Yeah, I kind of broke it down, like I said on my show yesterday, and the things that it would take for him to be able to do it. If it does, now I will say this: if it does happen, it won't be via the ways that are already established that it could happen according to our Constitution. It would actually have to be a hostile takeover. It would have to be some unlawful, unconstitutional way for it to happen. And I'll never say never in that regard. But as far as what is on the books, what is written by our founding fathers and on the law on the law books. It's not gonna happen that way. I'll put it that way. It won't happen that way.
It's another fear tactic. Trump's not gonna run again. It's another fear tactic just to get the Democrat side talking, and just because I like you guys, I would be focusing on different things besides Trump third term. I would be focusing on midterms, and I would be focusing on specifically. Let's narrow it down. I'd be focusing on AFTAB versus the Republican in the city of Cincinnati, because that's going to be the telltale of what's going on. And
it is not. It is not, Tarris. Let me assure you, quit selling them wolf tickets right now, brother. I'm telling you right now that neither.
I want to see a good fight over here. I want to see a good old-fashioned battle.
It would be nice, but you ain't gonna get it with the two cats that's up and down. I will say this, and I've said this in a couple of different places where I've been, that Corey Bowman's got the JD Vance juice behind him, but he's still running for a mayoral position in a blue city. And what it would essentially have to take is a whole lot more voter apathy than the 27% or whatever it is already. I mean, look, it just ain't gonna happen. It's kind of like talking about a Republican winning the Cincinnati mayor is kind of like talking about that Trump third term. It's fiction. It's just something. It's just something to talk about. It's just something. It's a trolling type thing. Like if I wanted to troll Democrats in Cincinnati, I'd come out with a hot take. They're like, man, it's gonna be a neck and neck race between Corey Bowman and AFTAB. If I wanted to get people stirred up and troll some Democrats in the city, I might say something like that, but then I would lose all credibility because nobody would believe it. So I actually think he is maybe trying to position himself for something else. I think I said this, that winning might not be the point for him. It might be a trial balloon, a test run, see what you do, see what are some other opportunities. I'll tell you this much. I think if he had ran for city council, he probably could have got on council. I think he might have been able to garner enough support to be a Republican who slipped in on the tail end, maybe like that. One of those last seats, he might be able to.
One of those Phil Heimlich types.
Garner enough votes to get in there on one of those last seats, just because, again, I think the JD Vance juice is a real thing. Here in these parts of Southwest Ohio. certain parts of Southwest.
I want to see it. I want to see a good.
Right.
I want to see a good debate. I want to see a good primary if we have to. I just want to see see what Cincinnati politics on the mayor race is all about, because Kentucky was used for the gubernatorial race. It was Matt Bevins versus Andy Beshear, and that was a litmus test to see how the 2020 election went. And I'm curious to see, because you guys are in an odd year, I believe, a 2025 mayor election. So that could be a test on what's going to happen for 2026 midterms. So as someone who studies this stuff, I like seeing it. And I'm happy to see Cincinnati being the hotbed. And then all the stuff that happened with the Lincoln Heights and all that kind of stuff, I can see it just stirring, the pot stirring. And like we said, with the J.D. Vance juice. And the narrative, writing narrative stories, like when he came to town and went over, where was he at, Findlay Market, and somebody tried to approach him and he was like, making a political grandstand. I can just see Cincinnati, and I hope it doesn't. I want to see it be a fair election, but nothing like good old fashioned politics.
All right.
Yeah, you got to get some good candidates. I think if you want to, I mean, look, there are, I think, Democrat and Republican candidates who could have run, who could give, who could give AFTAB a decent debate, or, I'm not going to toss out any particular names, but there are folks out there, not saying that they would win, but I think they would be kind of better than what
you talking about Phil Heimlich?
Yeah, well, Phil for
Oh,
I don't live in the city.
But again, you also got to contend with, I think AFTAB has a pretty decent war chest as well, which, money is always a factor. Now if Bowman get Elon Musk to drop in Cincinnati and start handing out $1 million checks, hey, anything is possible.
He's in Wisconsin right now doing it.
Yeah, I saw somebody say that Elon could buy their vote if he showed up with a check for $1 million. I ain't too sure if he dropped $1 million on me. I might not. I might not switch up. I can use $1 million.
With that, folks, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Well, just so you know, I want to say, Kevin, it's good to know that you're easily.
Well, not easily. I don't think $1 million. If you think $1 million is easily,
I'm sorry.
I don't have anybody rolling up on me offering me $1 million every day. Maybe you do, Phil. See, that just goes to show. I've said it time and again on this show. The tax bracket that Phil is, $1 million is easily bought for Phil Heimlich, y'all. That lets you know what this dude is rolling with. I keep trying to tell y'all on the pod every show.
What about
this man right here is dangerous?
What about Phil Fame calling him Hank? He called Phil Hank earlier. I was like, I about lost it when he called Phil Hank. He said, wait a second, Hank.
Well, that's my father.
Okay.
My son's name.
He did his research. I appreciate that Fame dude coming on. He knew some stuff.
And with that, guys, thank you so much for your time. Now, we're not going to be with you on Friday. We won't be live streaming. We'll be back next week on Tuesday at 1 p.m. and also next Friday at 1 p.m. So please join us. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great Tuesday.
See everybody.